আসসালামু আলাইকুম। আজকে ইরান ও আমেরিকা ইসরায়েলের মধ্যকার দ্বিতীয় দিন চলতেছে এবং লাস্ট কনফার্মেশন অনুযায়ী আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনি শহীদ হয়ে গেছে। আমরা সবাই তার জন্য দোয়া করি এবং ইরানিদের জন্য আসলে দোয়া করি। রমজান মাসে মুসলিমদের হয়ে আসলে যেভাবে আসলে তারা লড়াই করছে এবং অনেক দিনের একটা তুমি বলতে গেলো সাইকোলজিক্যালি যেটা ডিফিট ছিল ওইটারও কিন্তু আসলে ডিফেন্ড করছে ইরান এবং তারা প্রমাণ করছে জুন মাসে 2025 সালে যে না ইরানে মুসলিম দেশগুলো চাইলেও ইসরায়েলের ভিতরে তোমার মিসাইল দিয়ে অ্যাটাক করতে পারবে। সো ওটা একটা অনেক বড় জয় ছিল এবং এবার তো আসলে থ্রু আউট মিডল ইস্টে আসলে তারা যেভাবে ক্যাম্পেইন করতে পারছে ওইটা অসাধারণ এবং এখন দেখার বিষয় আসলে কোন দিকে আসলে ইরান যায়। সো আমরা কন্টিনিউ করি, পরবর্তী সময় আমি আবার কিছু অ্যাড করার থাকলে আসলে অ্যাড করবো।
uh, there is absolutely no way. So they're now going on a revenge mission, which is hitting. Now, understand, till 2 hours back, if you'd asked me the same question, I would have said they've been fairly ethical so far, just hitting military targets. But as of this evening, they are clearly targeting civilian targets. They hit on the Palm Jumeirah, the Fairmont Hotel Palm Jumeirah. People were trying to say it was probably a drone that got misdirected or shot down. They've hit an apartment building in Manama in Bahrain. They've hit Kuwait International Airport. Okay, why would you do that? So they're taking their targeting beyond military targets, and it's entered civilian targeting now. Never a good idea. Never a good idea, because then it just hardens everybody else's opinion. Countries that were on the, well, we're not going to get involved in this. Now they have no option other than to get involved in this. Of course, with the Arab countries, they have a very long fuse. They don't retaliate just helter-skelter. But they're not happy. They're not going to do any favors to the Iranians anymore. And whatever goodwill Iran might have had in being seen as, accommodating in the talks and being the aggressee, being the victim, that is gone, because now the Omanians, who were till a few hours back furious with America they believed they had a deal. The Omanis are now really pissed off with the Iranians as well. So the last friend they had in the region is gone. This is number one. Number two, the one thing we know, that the Saudi-Pakistan pact is absolute shit. Because when the Afghans attacked Pakistan, the Saudis, forget lifting a finger, they didn't even put out a condemnation. And now when Saudi Arabia gets hit again, the Pakistanis have put out a very anodyne statement saying absolutely nothing. So all up, this is very good. It's very healthy, I think. Third, I think this, by all means, defang them. You send in ground troops to secure the material locations, because that doesn't require too many ground troops, a few thousand. Extract all the material, and over 2-3 months while you're providing air support to protect them, and get out. That's doable. But asking people to rise up when you know the military, police, IRGC won't think twice about shooting them, not done. Very unethical. So this regime change thing has gone a bit far. But fourth, let's see what the Americans are doing on regime change. They've said, the Israelis today said that they're going to kill the present, past, and future leadership. And they're extending their strikes to the judiciary, the mullacracy, and the executive. The last time they only targeted military targets. This time they're targeting all the leadership. Now, what that means is you will essentially have an Iran shorn of leaders, where I suspect the far, far more radical and indoctrinated Iranian colonels, IRGC colonels, will take over, and they will make it a much, much more radical regime. Remember, this is what happens when you do decapitation of radical organizations. Now, I don't believe the Iranians are as fanatical as the Israelis and Americans say. But let's assume I'm wrong and the Israelis are right, that they are fanatical. What happens when you decapitate an organization? Every time you kill a Hezbollah leader or a Hamas leader, the fellow who replaces them is actually much, much more virulent. Much more virulent. They may lack power for a while, like we see Hezbollah now. That doesn't mean they will always lack that power. And their survival instincts, because they have survived, they know how to survive you, are much sharper, much more honed. And see, power tends to corrupt. The upper echelons of power tend to corrupt. So it has that sort of, moderating effect on you. With these guys, young, colonel level, 30s, 40s, coming to power, very, very dangerous, boss. Tomorrow, what if they just decide to do a dirty bomb? They don't need a nuclear bomb. What if they just take highly radioactive material, put it in a warhead, and decide to spray it over the region? With the Saudis, Emiratis, Bahrainis, Qataris, it's mostly desert. But Israel is very urban, it's very green. You imagine a high altitude explosion of highly radioactive material happening even before the intercepts happen. What do you think happens? I don't have a good feeling about this.
So like, how does a regime change happen? They have to have boots on the ground. What, they're gonna keep air bombing Iran? Like, how does this happen? I don't understand.
You can never do regime change from the air. You need to have, people use two examples of regime change from the air. Well, one is cooperation from the air, the other is regime change from the air. And that is the NATO bombing campaign of Kosovo, where Serbia agreed to vacate Kosovo just based on 40, 50, I forget how many days, months of bombing. Definitely more than a month worth of bombing. The second was Libya, where American, British and French ground forces did not get involved, but there was a good chunk rebel army on the ground which benefited from this thing. Now, you have dissuaded Serbia through airstrikes. You have helped ground rebels take over power in Libya through airstrikes. Regime change purely through airstrikes? No. You need something on the ground. And the thing there is, the military, both the military and the IRGC, they're very loyal to the regime. So they're not going to really be doing anything for you. But like I said, best of luck. Fifth, we have certain interests out here. I'm going to use a chicken analogy. We want the chicken to get halaled. We want the chicken to get roasted in the oven. The chicken being Iran. The symbol of Iran is the simorg. Do you know the simorg? Related to murg.
मतलब ठीक है, कुछ तो होगा उसका.
Simorg. It's the phoenix in Iranian mythology. Well, it's kind of like a phoenix, but let me show this to you. Along with the Farvahar, it is the symbol of Iran. Let me show you this.
Want to create an online store but not sure what to do next? With managed WooCommerce hosting from Hostinger, you can skip.
Can you see it?
I put it up. Yeah, abhi wo load ho raha hai.
Okay, this is the simorg.
Okay,
it's chicken. Well, it's a chicken with a lion's head, I guess. But we want the chicken roasted, which is to say we don't want a nuclear Iran. But we don't want a dead Iran. Because our interest lies in perpetuating the Shia-Sunni split. The
Ek minute.
Shia-Sunni,
But how do we do that, Abhijit?
we can't.
Yeah,
You have to
मतलब
Papa.
control हमारे पास तो variables ही नहीं है ना वो control में.
See, we don't have control. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just pointing out that there is a divergence of interest.
You're saying what we prefer.
Now, we want Iran contained. We want Hezbollah Hamas gone. We want, Iranian military power eroded. But we don't want the regime gone because we need radical Shias to control radical Sunnis up to a point. We don't want an Iran that is friendly with Pakistan. That never went well for us till 1979. Till 1979, remember, the Shah was an absolute bitch to us. We don't want that situation again. And a vacuum also doesn't suit us. Because in a vacuum, remember, there are two Sunni majority provinces. Sistan wa Balochistan, which is the south eastern province bordering Pakistan, and Khuzestan, which is the Arab province bordering Iraq, the southwestern province bordering Iraq. The Pakistanis can play a lot of mischief out there if they choose to. We don't want that. Okay. Now, that being the case, we want a chicken that is roasted. We don't want a chicken that's burnt. We want tandoori simurg, not burnt simurg. This is the overall aspect.
Okay, 2-3 questions. Do you think the Iranians notice they're not attacking the Israelis as much as they're attacking the Shia, the Sunnis, American bases and the Sunnis, because their entire aim is to basically screw the oil supplies, and their only card is a short-term spike in oil rates, which puts pressure on Trump.
They could have targeted oil facilities. They're not. They're targeting civilian facilities. So they're clearly not thinking straight. Why would you see those missiles are very expensive? What did you gain from hitting the Fairmont Dubai and the apartment in Manama? That should have been used to maybe blow up some of the offshore, oil facilities and things like that, but they didn't do that. So I don't think they're thinking straight at the moment. And invariably, attacks on civilian facilities indicate a breakdown of command or panic. That's the main thing we need to remember.
So you don't think this is something to do with increasing the oil price so much that Trump is forced to deal with the scenario in a more defensive way?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't. And he's not going to get defensive. See...
okay, that scares me even more. Then what do the Americans do?
Well, the Americans intensify their attack. Very significantly intensify their attack. That's what they're going to do. That's how they always react. Remember, this isn't the first time that a Gulf country has attacked other Gulf countries. Remember, during the first Iraq war, the liberation of Kuwait, they were firing rockets at the UAE and Saudi Arabia and things like that, left, right, and center. They even fired rockets at Israel, even though Israel had nothing to do with that war. So this is one of those things where, oh, by the way, the American base in Manama has been struck again right now. And 12 civilian deaths since the morning in Kuwait. 4 injured in Dubai, and 1 क्या कहते हैं इसको? हाँ, 1 Pakistani killed. Yeah. Okay, so where was I?
No, I was talking to you about the strike pattern. Now, what do you think the Americans and the Israelis are going to attack?
They're going to continue. They're not going to change their path. They're doing ballistic missile interceptions. But look, drones are much easier intercepted ground to air than air to air, because air to air missiles are much more expensive. You have much shorter range ground to air missiles, which are cheaper. But I'm surprised that they've not been able to detect and hit them in across the Gulf, and they didn't prepare for it, which shows you losing Gulf lives is a lower priority than losing Israeli lives for the Americans. Not surprising, but it is what it is. Sorry, what was the question again? I lost my train of thought.
No, my question was that, okay, they are attacking these haphazard places, civilian areas.
It's not haphazard. It's clearly calculated. Because remember, none of these countries have been attacked in a very long time. Imagine the psychological impact of you living in Dubai, suddenly facing attack. They're hoping to ruin the financial systems of the region and demoralize the expat population and trigger an economic meltdown there. Short-term economic meltdown, but I suspect, I can only guess. We don't know what they're thinking. But the Americans will continue to hit missile targets. They will continue to hit leadership targets. They're very serious about eliminating the entire leadership, and I think they'll manage to do it.
So what does it do to the global economy in the short term to mid term?
And like I told you, I hope I've advised you people before, buy gold. Have you all bought gold?
Everybody in India has gold.
नहीं है नहीं, खरीदा या नहीं gold?
How can I speak for others? Yeah.
Yes, you should buy gold. For every 5 rupees you invest in gold, invest 1 rupee in silver. You may be thinking, silver is down right now, etc., etc. Trust me, silver ain't going anywhere. Gold, silver, FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. It doesn't matter how much water there is, you still need to brush your teeth, use soap in your shower, and wash your ass.
Okay, you know what? We'll do something different this time. हम लोग अभी से ही क्वेश्चन लेना शुरू कर देते हैं, ठीक है? If US and Israel won't put boots on the ground, how can bombing cause regime change in Iran? How can civilians overthrow IRGC without military support? Boss, हो ही नहीं सकता है.
हो ही नहीं सकता है. It is physically
हो ही नहीं
impossible.
सकता.
Remember, one AK-47 with say 20-30 cartridges, you can easily mow down 100, 200 protesters. How many are going to die doing it? Not possible. I don't think people, there might be fools stupid enough to come try it, but it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's crazy. US has sophisticated forces and an economy to withstand a war. Is this why they don't do or don't have patience for diplomatic negotiations, or their diplomats are all like Trump Takkan?
Not really. See, it has more to do with they used diplomacy as a cover for a decision that they'd already taken. They used it as a gauge to see if the Iranians are serious or not. Now, if they had sensed the Iranians were panicking and ready to give up a lot of shit, maybe the strikes wouldn't have gone ahead at all. Now, look at it from the Iranian point of view. They are desperate to preserve as much as they can. They don't want to show panic, because panic in negotiations can lead to a lot of things being shoved down their throat, which they would not want to give. It would then extend to democracy and shit like that. So, I can see where the Iranian position came from, and this has always been the dilemma of deterrence. Deterrence has always been it's always been a twofold thing. Insufficiency of dissuasion and insufficiency of reassurance. You don't have enough power to dissuade the other person, but you're not willing to reassure the other country or the other side enough either. So in which case you may have enough power to dissuade, but if you don't reassure, it still goes down a failure of deterrence. And that's really what's happened out here. Okay. The second reason here is, I'm telling you about the negotiation, that even, the visibility of panic may not have helped the Iranians, is because there hasn't been a single time the Iranians haven't cheated. They keep building secret facilities, they keep enriching, building secret enrichment facilities, etc., 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 and that is never a good thing. So it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. They're too doctrinaire. They never change their positions. They're so hard up on their positions, they never change them. Between a lack of flexibility, which is fundamentally born of insecurity, hidden panic, and this whole thing of consistent lying, there was no way that the Americans went and Israelis weren't going to do what they have done.
Yeah. We have already answered this. Do you think they can use a dirty bomb? We have already answered
I
this.
suspect if they get desperate enough, that's what they're going to do.
If the Islamic regime survives, could it target India over Modi's Israel visit? Was the timing geopolitically unwise? And if Afghan-Pak war related to Iran?
No, the Af-Pak war is nothing to do with Iran. And our opposition has targeted Modi altu-faltu, but the Iranians aren't targeting us about it, because at the same time, and this is where I guess India Today saved us, because Kalipuri and Geeta Mohan rocked up there and interviewed their foreign minister. And, they're not going to target him. They've always known. Our relations with Israel have not been premised on our relations with Iran and vice versa. Iran also accepts that India has good ties with Israel, and they've never asked for that to change.
Is it possible? ये हमने answer कर दिया है. अरे यार, who cares about World Cup? Is there a possibility of a civil war in Iran?
Yes, it depends on who in the leadership is left, because young people tend to be very hot-headed. Young colonels, fundamentalist colonels, could there be civil war? Yes. Right now, if you ask me, I'd say it will be more a case of a prolonged high-intensity insurgency, really, rather than civil war. Because you don't have... See, the factions are the upper echelon factions, the theological factions, the generals who own business factions and things like that. It doesn't translate into the ground level, who are mostly indoctrinated, aren't exposed to the corruption, as in aren't part of the corruption. They probably know about the corruption. So no. Possible, yeah. I'll say between... Look, something unstable is going to happen in Iran, okay? If you ask me to divide the odds, I'd say 75% high-level insurgency, 25% civil war.
I've not been able to confirm the news, but apparently they've hit Kuwait International Airport. ये पागल लोग हैं क्या?
I've tweeted out the video.
Are these retarded people?
Well, I mean...
Okay, that was a rhetorical question.
I think they eat too much meat and too much animal fat, and I think it goes to their head. Like,
seriously, they are breaking norms, yeah.
I'm a confirmed non-vegetarian. And you've seen, I mean, I mostly eat vegetables. 90% of my meal is vegetables.
Yeah, I've
Maybe
stayed
only
at your
10%.
house. I know.
For them, everything is meat, 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 meat. I think now I'm sounding like my mother, but I just think it's like too much meat going to the head makes you a retard.
If American boots enter it, will it be worse than Afghanistan plus Iraq too, with educated and capable radicals with proper knowledge? Now they have motivation.
Boss, it's the educated and capable radicals aren't my worry. Remember, Iran was, and to some extent, in spite of its per capita population, remains a medium cusp of high, remnant of a cusp of high human development index country. समझ रहे हो ना? So it's one of those things where it's not going to be easy for you to deal with it, because the average Iranian is also fairly decently educated. Unpad gawar nahi milenge. Don't interpret fundamentalist as a uneducated country bumpkin. They're actually dangerous, number one. Number two, Iran is half the size of India. It's 1.6 million square kilometers, heavily mountainous. If you go look at a topographic map, let me try to find a topographic map of Iran. Okay, let me show you this, because people don't seem to understand. Oh yeah, there's a high-res one. Okay. Put an image in your tab. Yeah, okay, let me share this. Okay, can you see this?
Yeah, it's loading.
Okay. You look at, tell me, where do you see a plane anywhere here? This is not easy territory. Boss, when you fly Qatar or Emirates, when we used to fly over Iran, it isn't just these mountains that get snow. Huh? It is also these mountains that get snow. Okay, fine. It's not as high as Afghanistan with the Karakoram and things like that. But boss, this is not an easy country to get into, huh? Not easy at all. So for all of you who think it's a desert, there is this. But other than that, this is not easy. So you have to get over this notion that it is an easy country for boots in the ground and things like that.
Will US drop the N-bomb if Iran? I don't think so.
No. But if they use a dirty bomb, yes, there is a possibility.
Okay. Did you hear about the India allegedly seizing 3 Iranian tankers after Iran detained 16 Indian sailors with what happened today? And that's why India is keeping Mama. Kya? Jaishankar tweeted he spoke with Iranian counterparts 45 minutes ago.
Okay, I don't. I haven't been following it. I think there have been more climactic things to follow right now.
Will Strait of Hormuz come under fire, or will they leave it to have negotiation room? They've already said no travel in Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. They've shut off the strait. I mean, they haven't shut it off, but they've ordered the closure of the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah, and that is 20% of vessel cargo. 20%.
And just in case you chaps didn't know, Hormuz is Ahura Mazda. So it's the Straits of Ahura Mazda, which in Middle Persian became Hormazd, which is why you have names in India like Hormazd Sorabji, who you know is a Parsi and not an Irani. Iranis are the ones who came in the 18th, 19th century. Parsis are the ones who came in the 7th century. In Middle Iranian, it became Hormazd, and in modern Iranian, it's Hormuz.
And bad news from an Indian perspective is 40% of our oil supply goes from there.
Yes.
तो अपने तो बुरी तरह से ऐसे लेजेंडरी लड़े लग गए हैं इसमें.
But you understand this is why Putin will probably not do anything, because he's not, look, not probably, he's not going to do anything. But it's great for Putin because then the value of Russian oil is again.
तो मतलब बेसिकली अभी हमको झक मारा के फिर से रूसियों से ऑयल लेना पड़ेगा.
But we have never had an issue with it.
तो हम फिर से रशियन ऑयल लेंगे.
Only reason we have reduced Russian oil purchases is the price of Russian oil has gone up again significantly. That's it.
Won't the future Iran leadership be anti-India anyway because of Bibi, Modi, Trump personal relationship-led foreign policy? Good question, huh? Can we follow Taliban-like relationship with Iran based on pragmatic humanitarianism? Very good question. Really impressive question.
But we've already answered this. The future and the current Iranian leadership accepted the fact we're close to this thing. See, they don't mind anybody getting close to Israel as long as it's not targeted towards them. They have an issue with people getting close when it's targeted at them. We've never targeted them in that relationship. Okay, number one. And I would say we have a much better relationship with them than the Taliban does.
Okay. Iran hitting civilians right now, about Israel hitting Iranian school, which killed more than 50 people. I love Israel, but they always get away with this.
Yes, that is tragic. I have no reason to disbelieve the Iranians because I don't think, at least I haven't seen proof that the Iranians do what Bollywood does, which is, put dolls and dress up and do fake deaths. I do believe it's actually gone up to 80. It's not 50 anymore. 85 schoolgirls killed, all between the age of 7 and 12. I do think, unfortunately, it did happen. I don't need to see bodies, but generally the Iranians tend not to lie about these. I haven't heard them lie about these things. So it is tragic, but understand, in war, horrible accidents happen. They happen. There is a big difference between an accident happening and targeting someone. Now, just because nobody died in the Manama Tower attack, 12 people died in the Kuwait attack, we don't know how many have died. Maybe those 4 people who died in Dubai were in the Fairmont attack. That was intentional targeting. This, we don't know if it was intentional targeting, an attack gone wrong, or an intentional attack with bad intelligence. Intentional attack, war crime. Intentional attack with bad intelligence, there's no real prosecution in a war. There is no war rule against it. It's counted as a mistake. Missile gone wrong, tragedy. So it's one of those things where, you have to see, does it become a pattern? How do we know Iran is actually targeting civilians? Because it's a pattern. We've seen 4 attacks today on civilian targets. Right? Here, this is the exception. We don't know how many bombs have fallen so far, but this is the exception. It's tragic. I know it's those parents, they've lost everything. There's no, it's a tragedy.
Why did the PM decide to go to Israel? Bhai, we were going for a trade thing. हमारा क्या लेना देना इन लोगों के झगड़े से?
No, look, we knew something was happening in January. We put out the advisory in January. I'm 100% sure the Israelis told us exactly what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. We put out a formal statement some 6-7 days back as well. Not an advisory, but a formal statement. And apparently nobody took it seriously. Nobody took it seriously. Now understand, it isn't a dangerous time for us because there was no way in hell the Israelis were going to, if anything, it acted to delay the Israeli attack, because there was no way Israel was going to attack Iran when the Indian Prime Minister was in Israel risking his security. You never do that. Okay. If anything, I would say it actually had a delaying effect, and it wasn't dangerous at that point because there was no danger that Iran was going to initiate a strike.
Where are Russia and China in all of this? Evacuation plan we have answered. What do you think the Russians and the Chinese are going to do now?
I don't know about the evacuation plan. They will probably find some window to send some planes and pick them up. We shouldn't be picking them up because technically they should have followed the advisory, or at least we should charge them cost.
We're not going to charge them. We always pick our citizens up. You know it, I know it.
I know. But anyway,
Americans take money from their citizens.
We should. See, that will incentivize people to actually follow advisories. Tum na suno, and then the taxpayer has to pick up the bill for your bravado. Are you kidding me? It's disgusting. Bring up that question again.
Okay, I will.
And Russia, China. Look, Russia didn't even bloody come to Armenia's help. What do you think Russia's going to do here? They've got enough problems in Ukraine, boss. Have you seen how the line there is moving? It moves like what? 100 meters every week or something like that. So Russia's going to do diddly squat. I think the worst thing the Russians can do, actually the best thing the Russians can do, is actually give a few bombs to the Iranians.
रशिया तो इस समय क्या कर रहा हूं मैं? Make it rain. गिरे तो कमाया तेल, बढ़े तो कमाया तेल.
Think about this. If Putin were a deal-making man, he approaches Trump and say, Ukraine collapses before your campaign in Iran ends, else I'm going to see to it Iran gets the bomb. What are you going to do?
Yeah, Trump, and I think he has miscalculated this one.
What if China says, we're going to attack Taiwan, you're going to do nothing, you're going to lose a lot of people, that's fine. But if you do something, we'll give the bomb to Iran. What happens then? But I don't think conventionally the Russians and the Chinese are going to do diddly squat. The Chinese anyway make it very clear they don't believe in allies, alliances, and they don't come to other people's military help. The last time they did this was in the Korean War in the 1950s, and they've never really done it again.
Even if US and Israel forces decapitate their leadership, Iranian, totally, what stops Iran from becoming an Islamic military dictatorship that is hostile to Israel and US and maybe even India?
That's exactly what we said right at the beginning. Remember?
Yeah.
We discussed that.
Okay, this is a legit going around. Trump is doing this to distract from the Epstein files. Like, I don't think Trump is that mental.
No. Look, I think, did the Epstein files play some role in the timing of the attack? Maybe, but did they play a role in the attack itself? No. No. In fact, Netanyahu would want more attention on the Epstein files because his worst political enemy was Ehud Barak, and Ehud Barak is deeply, deeply implicated in it. Possibly in some of the rape murders as well that happened in Epstein Island. So, but Netanyahu would go along. I mean, you could make a case Netanyahu would go along for Trump. But we also need to remember Netanyahu and Trump had planned this attack 3-4 months back. There is no way this is something that has happened in the last month. This kind of an attack requires planning. They sat back, they saw what was happening. If you remember when we did this, when the last attack happened, I told you something will happen again because Kuhe Kolong, the Hammerhead Mountain, which is near the Natanz reactor. It's the mountain overlooking the reactor. Let me bring this up for you. Do you remember that? Pickaxe Mountain. Yeah. And let me see. So let me show you a rough context of what it is. Yeah, this is a good image. This is a very good image. अबे यार ये क्या हो गया?
Share करना.
Let me share this now. No, I was just finding a good high-res image. Okay, can you see this?
Okay, I need to put it on the full screen.
Yeah. Okay, now this area here and further down is the Natanz reactor. This is Kohe-Kalang, the Pickaxe Mountain. Can you see these roads here leading into it, into the tunnels? 1,
Yes,
2,
yes.
3, there's an entrance here as well. This facility is buried 300 meters deep. No amount of bunker buster can get into it. And it remained untouched during the last attack. Untouched. Okay. And that is why I told you I expect round 2. So, that's that.
ये बंदी मेरे को लगता है दुबई में है. Is there a hypersonic missile attack on Dubai? The Dubai air defense.
You shouldn't be worried about if it was hypersonic, if it was ballistic, if it was this thing. An attack is an attack, boss. I don't think, I haven't seen, maybe something has happened in the last 30-40 minutes when we've been talking here, which was hypersonic, but till then I had not seen anything hypersonic. They were all subsonic drones that had come in. UAE air defense is sophisticated. I think the blowing up of that radar in Bahrain in the afternoon basically facilitated these strikes, because that was the long range radar that was meant to look for anything coming across the Persian Gulf, and taking that out meant now that you don't have the eyes to intercept.
भाई ये लोग पागल हैं. I just read a latest report. बुर्ज खलीफा के आसपास भी मार दिया इन्होंने.
Yeah, they have.
ये क्या पागल लोग हैं क्या? अरे civilian area है भाई. How can you hit civilian areas?
पागल नहीं है, हरामजादे हैं. That's it.
Oh man, they deserve what is coming to them now. They deserve what is coming to them. I'm sorry.
Next.
Who controls escalation in the Iran conflict anymore? Another brilliant question. Salah, who is controlling this now? I'm assuming the generals.
Look, it's escalation dominance. Don't confuse the ability to detract from America and Israel have absolute control over escalation dominance. Never mistake that. Just because Iran is able to pull off spectacular visuals doesn't mean they've lost escalation control. The same way, I know many of you went alive during the Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm. The Scud, that is when Scud became there was a very famous rock star who named his kid Scud after that. Scud missile. They had spectacular visuals, but it never changed the course of the conflict. So conflict escalation, make no mistake, lies with the militarily superior power. Next.
Abhijit, with benefit of hindsight, do you think if Iran had played its cards right from at least the 90s, this wouldn't have been the case?
भाई alternate history में जाना है तो obviously.
कोई मतलब नहीं हो. You know what the problem with this is? If my auntie was a man, it would be my uncle kind of a scenario. है ये. So
Obviously, once you do your cards right, you won't be where you are. Na? In 1979, you know, Iran was ahead of South Korea and Taiwan. They could have been richer than South Korea or Taiwan today. And look what they chose.
Yeah.
The Americans were more than happy to work with Ayatollah Khomeini. But then he had to go do that embassy siege thing, and that was it. You see, there's nothing you can do. Once the foundational mistakes are made, institutionally, it only keeps compounding.
Okay. Will creating a vacuum lead to warlordism? No, I don't think so. Honestly, us level ki society. I think people think like Iran is like Afghanistan.
No, possibly it could.
Kaise?
You could have competing commanders. You could. I don't rule it out.
Okay.
Power
ये
tends
देखो,
to fracture. You don't have to have a tribal power structure for power not to fracture. Remember that.
इस हरामी इंडियन को देखो. India should sell Akash to UAE, Saudi, Oman, Bharat.
They haven't bitten. But what we should be selling is our drone interception systems. You know, those greener technologies and what's the other one? Zentech and all of that. That's what we should be selling. I think it would actually do well in that market given what's happened right now. Next.
जब protest हो रहे थे तो
good is we should say we are going to protect and we should send defensive equipment only, and we should actually send those place an emergency order with Greener and Zen and send it out there and demonstrate their effectiveness.
हाँ थोड़ा पैसे ही कमा ले. सी जब प्रोटेस्ट हो रहे हैं तो तब क्यों नहीं आया यूएसए? ये भी अगेन इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है. उंगल के टाइम पे यूएसए कभी नहीं आता है, हमेशा बाद में उंगल करता है. ये बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट था. अरे ये so US air defense systems didn't work.
Yeah,
boss.
But look, there is no such thing as a completely immune air defense system, boss. Things will always get through. Okay, they'll always get through. If you have a determined enough enemy. In this case, I think our air defenses performed much better.
What happens with an autonomous or independent Sistan, Balochistan? What's the best strategy for India in ensuring our interests are not harmed?
It can go one of two ways. It could help balance out the tribes that are revolting in Balochistan right now, saying, well, you've been under Shia oppression, do you really want that, etc., etc. Or it can become an even bigger headache for Pakistan. But Pakistan never cares about that, you understand? They never think beyond their noses. As a rule, we shouldn't like fracturing. It doesn't serve our interests. We need a fairly strong Iran that is not aligned with Pakistan.
Fair enough. Do you think Trump can concentrate on one topic for more than 2 weeks? He gets bored, moves on unless Iran gets lucky, sinks aircraft carriers.
Yeah.
But आज उसने speech में बोला था कि ये लंबा चलेगा. He did say that, so people should not underestimate that.
So the Pentagon said it would go on for 4 days, and now he's saying lamba chalega. See, there's no this thing.
Okay, with possible Iran regime change, would Turkey try to increase their influence in the Middle East with Islamic NATO? Would India counter it with Israel, UAE, Greece, a hexagonal alliance that Bibi proposed?
Look, we don't know how Turkey will... Look, these things are... See, they're very, very stochastic. You can predict up to a point. You can't predict beyond a point. Okay? Because you never know what variables come into play. It's physically impossible to model these things. Okay? Turkey will always try to increase their influence, except Turkey has a de facto...
care wherever you are today. Thank you all for joining us at the Teo Town Hall. Today,
axis with Iran and anti-Iran. They're frenemies. They are allied on certain things and they hate each other on Armenia. Okay. So it's one of those things, and they can't extend their influence into Iran because Iran is Shia.
Yeah.
Right. They have extended their influence into Syria, which is Sunni now. But very, very difficult to predict. And I don't think we're playing that game They're not playing the game that those guys are playing.
ये क्या क्वेश्चन है? How are Pakistanis feeling right now? भाई वो लोग अफगानिस्तान को तो संभाल ले. How are they feeling right now?
Let's call some Pakistanis and ask them.
Right now they're not feeling good. उनकी cricket team भी World Cup से बाहर हो गई है.
Pakistanis is when this shit happens, they play both sides. पता है? They're like, oh, Israel, fascist, Zionist, killing Muslims. But then they're like, oh, Pakistan Air Force is the second best Air Force after Israeli Air Force. In fact, the Israeli Air Force draw inspiration from the PAF, and the PAF draws inspiration from the Israeli Air Force. It's just that we don't make it public. And they'll also claim, oh, we provided airspace and intel for this attack.
Who has supplies to continue conflict excluding China as the chief factory is in conflict with neighbor? And
supply route bhi kuch hota hai, boss.
Yes.
How are you going to supply Iran?
Yeah, yes, कितना frustrated question है. Why does Trump want so much instability in the world? इतना frustrated question है ना ये. अबे कमीने Trump.
I don't think he sees it as instability. I think he actually sees it as stability. I think he thinks he is trying to make a more stable world. More explosions in Bahrain.
A lot of questions have already been answered, so I'm skipping through some. जैसे कि India का response we've already answered. Okay, this is a good question. ये देखिए तेरे वाला है. How do you compare Indian defense performance?
এই রমজানে টেস্টিং সল্ট মুক্ত চপস্টিক ইনস্ট্যান্ট নুডলসে পাচ্ছেন 10 থেকে 25 টাকা পর্যন্ত ছাড়।
Hello everyone, sending you all wishes of safety and care wherever you are today. Thank you all for joining us in another Zateo Town Hall. Today, the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran, setting off a series of events that are still unfolding as we speak. One such attack by the Israeli and US governments killed over 80 students reportedly at a girls' school. Iran's retaliation included attacks on US bases in the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, and so forth. Debris has endangered civilians in these countries. And now, Israeli officials are claiming that they say that the Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is dead. History, as we see, is being written, and it's not yet clear who's going to be left holding the pen. We will be live for the next hour. Please feel free to share questions with us wherever you happen to be watching. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Later, I will be joined by Nagar Mortazawi and Trita Parsi, but first, I will be joined by my colleagues Mehdi Hassan and Swin Soub saying, Mehdi, how are you reacting to things? I know things are changing by the second, but when you first saw the strike and now, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I saw the strikes last night. I was in a hotel room in Atlanta heading here to Texas for an event. And I wasn't sure what it was, right, Prem? Because a lot of the reporting, including from Swin, who's going to give us his take in a moment, was, is this going to be a smaller strike first and then they do a big strike later? Is this Trump's way of bringing the quote-unquote regime to the table, even though they were in the middle of negotiations, even though hours before these strikes, the Omani foreign minister, the Omanis, for those of you who don't know, don't tend to talk very much in public. The foreign minister of Oman went on American TV and said, you know what? The Iranians have pretty much agreed to everything the Americans want. They've gone beyond what Barack Obama got from the Iran deal, and yet they still attacked, which everyone should keep in mind when they hear American officials saying this was about the nuclear program. A complete load of bullshit. This is a huge attack. Trump called it a massive wave of attacks last night, and Senator Tom Cotton, the very hawkish Republican chair of the Intel Committee, has said today this is an attack that won't end in days, it's going to last weeks. So we are looking at a major attack. I've always worried that a war with Iran would make the war with Iraq look like a walk in the park. I hope I'm proven wrong. Something you said, Prem, stuck out to me, which is, history's being written, but we don't know how it's going to be written. The problem we have, and I would urge all Zateo subscribers to keep this in mind who are watching right now, is the media are going to tell you all sorts of things about who's up, who's down, who's won, who's lost. It's meaningless. This is the first few hours of a major, major war. Remember what happened after Iraq. Remember George Bush standing on a ship saying mission accomplished. Remember the people who mocked some of us saying, see, it all worked out amazingly. We took over the country. We got Saddam. And Iraq was the disaster it was. Same with Afghanistan. Same with Libya. This early basking of triumph doesn't always last. And let's see what happens with American soldiers. Trump has talked about American soldiers losing their lives possibly. And I know my colleague Swin, I want to hand over to him, has just been reporting on that.
Okay, so when Trump announced this in the middle of the night in his stupid fucking hat, and he's now running a major regional bloodbath from the auspices of fucking Mar-a-Lago, his private
Wedding venue
club in Florida, in the months-long lead up to this moment, he was briefed by intelligence officials and senior administration appointees repeatedly about the array of potential options and wargaming and gaming out of scenarios that the highest levels of the intelligence community, the Pentagon, and Trump's administration had done about, like, okay, if we go this route, if we go this route, if we take this military option or military option B, these are the ways that are setting aside everything else for a moment. These are all the different ways that there could be American casualties if you go ahead with any of these, like, arrays of options in a war with Iran, in a new war with Iran. The range and the gamut ran from a smaller number of potential U.S. casualties, military personnel and otherwise, in the region, if this was going to be a days-long conflict, a weeks-long conflict, or if things spiraled and this became a protracted engagement. Obviously, the U.S. casualty numbers start to creep higher in these different estimates, in these different classified briefings. After all of that, the supposed peace president, the supposed ending wars president, all bullshit, we've known that since 2015, looked at all that and said, yeah, let's go ahead with it. It's okay. These American lives, which may very well be lost in these varying degrees of estimated numbers, gonna be totally worth it, so I can feel like a big man on the global stage with my latest horrifying air war above the Islamic Republic. And Donald Trump kind of acknowledged this after months of being briefed on these options and these potential American death tolls in his stupid fucking middle of the night speech, where he said, yes, our brave soldiers, some of them might die from this, but you know what? This is a noble mission and we need to do it, and we're doing this for the future, not the present. The Trump-Vance administration is trying to front run possibly inevitable stories about caskets coming home of dead American soldiers, and trying to front run all these stories about grieving widows and grieving families because Donald Trump wanted to feel like a big man. I am even a little bit surprised that the president of the United States just came out and said that in his inaugural speech on this so-called mission, that, oh yeah, sure, that could happen. I don't think I hear presidents usually talking in that way when they plunge us into regional bloodbaths. But there you go.
I'm curious, if you have a sense from your sources and folks that you've talked to your point, this is something that generally would be something that would come out in a shocking leaked tape that the New York Times would report on in the midst of the beginning of an assault campaign like this. He went out and said it in his USA hat, mind you, at his, Mar-a-Lago beach.
In prepared remarks.
Right, prepared remarks. And I might add also, just added the symbolism, a week and a half after the Israelis, who he's working on behalf of at the behest of, killed another American. So I'm curious, did your sources have this sense of whether they thought that was strategic, that they were just going to be so explicit in saying Americans will possibly die from this?
Well, yes, in part because, look, they knew they would have to grapple with this publicly in one form or another, especially over the coming days and the coming weeks, largely because they have seen all of the same polling that the three of us have, and that I think our viewers have, which is overwhelmingly the American public do not want this fucking war. They do not want it. Every single poll shows that a supermajority either are strongly or moderately opposed to it, or just do not support what Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and the rest of this gang has just unleashed. So, look, Donald Trump's approval rating is hovering in disaster territory right now, right around the mid-30s. The Republican Party knows that they could get dragged down by this guy's approval numbers in the upcoming 2026 midterms. And they also know how unpopular military action against Iran right now is with American voters. And everybody knows how disastrously unpopular in an election year it can be if you're going about shambling about the Middle East or any other region, and viral images of bodies of American military personnel are being flown home to crying children and crying families. Yeah. So this is almost like a murder-suicide pact that the entire upper echelons of the Donald Trump administration are in with right now, where they know how sideways politically speaking, not even talking militarily, but politically speaking, this can go for them very quickly, but they still are just gonna do it because the God King Emperor Trump feels like doing it, is going ahead with it. And yeah, there's just, even from the people in the administration, like the Tulsi Gabbards of the world, who are supposed to be fundamentally opposed to this stuff, they're kind of shruggy emojing it off. Donald Trump, the big strong man, he's got it with his sidekick J.D. Vance. And to go back to something you were saying earlier, Prem, you were saying at the behest of the Israelis. Okay, yeah, there is kind of elements of where you can argue Netanyahu is trying to take the American government for a ride on all these kinds of different regime change actions. But at the end of the day, this is an inherently American mission. It has been in the neoconservative and particularly American Republican Party bloodstream for years, if not decades, to try to force a regime change war in Iran. And they finally got their man to help them do it. A mentally desiccated, elderly, racist game show host. Congratulations, Republican Party.
Yeah, Mehdi, there's a few questions that comes from that. Firstly, we talk about the question of public will. Mandeep K on Substack asks a good question here, which is, what evidence does a country have to show that an attack was imminent? It feels like USA and Israel, quote, say that an attack is imminent to back up their illegal attacks often, as we've seen before. So let's talk about the language of preemption and preventative strikes.
Yeah, it's a good question. We just run a piece at Zateo. If you're a Zateo subscriber, it's in your inbox from Alonso Gamundi, who's a law professor in the UK, making the point that this war is inherently completely illegal, just as the bombing last year was illegal. Under international law, under the UN Charter, which only allows the use of force in a case of self-defense or if it's been approved by the Security Council, neither of those count here. It's illegal under the US Constitution, which gives Congress the power to declare war. Think about this, Prem. Even George W. Bush and Dick Cheney went to Congress to get approval to attack Iraq. Trump has gone even beyond Bush, Cheney, and the neocons in terms of his unilateral aggression. This is a man who spoke in front of Congress 3 days ago, right? 3 days ago, he stands at the State of the Union and he gives a epically long and boring speech that you and I covered in real time, 1 hour, 48 minutes, and he didn't mention he was about to attack Iran. He didn't mention there was a threat to Americans from Iran, so he had a chance to tell people there's a war of self-defense coming. It wasn't a war of self-defense. Reuters are reporting today that this decision was made weeks ago, that they were going to do this. And if you plan to attack someone weeks in advance, by definition, they're not posing an imminent threat to you, and it's not self-defense. And all this bullshit, people in the mainstream media have been using the phrase preemptive war, using Israeli language. It is not a preemptive war. Preemptive war means someone's about to attack you, so you attack them first. There is zero evidence that Iran was about to attack anyone, that Iran has the kind of missiles that would allow it to attack the US, that it even has a nuclear weapons program. It doesn't. It always had a civil nuclear program, which the IAEA never said became a weapons program. Trump then bragged that he obliterated that program. It still says so on the White House website. So what nuclear threat were they trying to stop? I do want to pick up on something Swin said about, this being an American operation. A couple of things. Every Republican president does this, right? Every Republican president comes to office, cuts benefits for the poor, cuts taxes for the rich, raises prices, and then bombs a Middle East country. Ronald Reagan did it, George Bush Sr. did it, George Bush Jr. did it, and Donald Trump has done it. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Donald Trump is not just alone in that pack in the sense, as Swin so put it, mentally desiccated game show star. It's not just that it wasn't George Bush and Dick Cheney that attacked Iran. It was the guy from Home Alone 2. It's also the fact that he ran as the anti-war president, the anti-war candidate, the no more forever wars, the no regime change wars. Again, sorry to plug our excellent Zateo content today, but we just put out a piece at Zateo, listing out all the times Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. and Stephen Miller vote Trump. He's the guy who won't take us into any more Middle East wars. Kamala Harris will send your boys to fight and die, Stephen Miller said. Not us. Donald Trump said, there'll be no new war on my watch. He bombed 7 countries in 2024. He started 2025. He started 2026 attacking Venezuela. And now here we are with this major conflict in Iran. We don't know where it's going to go. And it was all a lie. And I'm sorry, I've got to say this. Swin said, we all knew. Well, many of us knew, but we also had a bunch of people on the right and sadly on the left too, who bought into this bullshit line that Donald Trump would be an anti-war candidate. He would be a candidate of restraint, of isolationism, Donald the Dove. It was bullshit. The people who fell for it, but the people who fell for it should apologize today or hang their heads in shame, because what Trump has done, as I say, in many ways is worse than even what Bush did. Bush at least turned up to Congress. Saddam Hussein at least had once had a weapons program that people were worried about. With Iran, it's completely illegal and unprovoked.
Yeah, Swin, I know you have to duck out soon. There's a question here from D.E. Niter on Substack. A few questions, but broadly, they're wondering, and I'm curious to ask you about this, because I'm curious if your sources have given any good sense of this, of process within, of logistics. D.E. Niter asks, do we have a clear and attainable objective? Have the risks and costs been fully and frankly analyzed? Have there been other non-violent policy means that have been pursued? Is there a plausible exit strategy? Have any of these questions of actual, genuine care for how this happens been at least entertained, even by even good faith people within the administration, or good faith people, I should say? What's your barometer on that?
The look on my face answers every single question that user or viewer asks. But look, I will say this. In the run-up to this, and we did reporting at Zadeo.com on this over the past couple of weeks, it was very hard to get senior administration personnel, or even Donald Trump himself, when other officials were talking to him about it behind closed doors, to say what the mission would be. Is it going to be regime change? Is it going to be pseudo-regime change? Is it about the weapons programs and other military capabilities? What is the end game here? There was barely even an effort to coalesce around a single message, either publicly or privately, among the Trump-Vance brass about what the end game and end goal looks like here. How long do we want to go? What kind of war or mission is here? One Trump advisor I was talking to for some reporting we were doing days ago, when I just straight up asked, okay, what is the mission here? What would it be? The response was, and I quote, "What mission?" It's so vibes based and so amorphous about, like, okay, this is about projecting American power, according to them. Okay, fine. But beyond that, why are you doing this besides trying to show how allegedly tough a guy Donald Trump is and about how you shouldn't fuck with him? Like, all of these, we were comparing this
the draft
to
dodger.
Right. And we've been doing plenty of comparing this to the atrocities and scandals and abuses of the Bush era. And I am not by any means handing it to the Bushes or the Donald Rumsfeld or the Dick Cheneys of the world, but they pretended, they at least put a patina of, like, respect to process or democratic value or spreading democracy as a neoconservative administration, things that sounded pretty at the time. But I think a lot of the people on this chat right now could see through at the time that it was just a lie, that the words were nice, but look at the actions, look at the bloodbath. Here you have the bloodbath, the rampant MAGA imperialism, and a degree of lawlessness, both at home and abroad, that you did not have with the Bushes and Cheneys, as atrocious as they were. And mixed into that, and obviously the Bushes and the Cheneys were plenty lawless, and mixed into that, you have this just jettisoning of even pretending to care about norms or spreading democracy or any of this bullshit that American imperialists are supposed to pretend to care about on live TV. So some hardened leftists might want to be cute with their argument about how, oh, well, isn't that better? It's unvarnished. The American empire is no longer pretending to care about you, blah, 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 blah. I would argue, and I will leave this to you guys to discuss since I have to jump in just a moment, I would argue, no, in every single metric, it is worse, both substantively and rhetorically.
Well, thank you for that thought, Swin. I know you have to duck out. Thank you so much. Appreciate you spending your time.
Peace.
See you, Swin.
I'm just going to pick up there, Prem, on what Swin said there about the...
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with Swin in the sense that the burning down of international law and norms is something that will be felt by the world for a long time to come. And I don't think we can overstate that. Israel in Gaza, now Trump in Iran. He mentioned the projection of power, wanting to look like a tough guy. There was a neoconservative writer, Michael Ledeen, he's since died, but he said around the Iraq wartime, he had a quote attributed to him. He said, every few years, America should grab a small, crappy little country and throw it against the wall just to show the world we mean business. And unfortunately, that is what a lot of American presidents, not just Republicans, but mainly Republicans, have done. And that is clearly what Donald Trump is doing here. I mean, we could talk about the goals. The goals are Trump wants to look strong and distract from his bad ratings. By the way, you know who said
Welcome to a unexpected office hours, maybe somewhat expected, as we talked about the last time. Should we call this emergency office hours? Like we've got a test coming up or something, and we need some clarification. Yes. Roy, where are you right now? What is happening?
I'm in Abu Dhabi. We actually came yesterday because we were going to see friends, and then the excitement started this morning. So this morning, UAE time.
What's going on?
So the United States and Israel attacked Iran. This is obviously very reminiscent of what happened 8 months ago with the 12-day war. The U.S. and Israel are striking infrastructure targets in Iran, which I think is a serious mistake. I think they should be focused on, if you're going to do this, you should be focused on decapitating the government, not destroying the state. And I think they don't understand the difference. And to clarify, because I think people don't get the difference in the United States usually between a government and a state. So when you elect the government. The government then takes control over the state. The state is this massive bureaucratic entity. I like how when idiots say deep state. There is only state. There's no such thing as deep state. That is what the state is. Like calling it deep state is, just meant to make you feel like there's some nefarious conspiracy. Here at the end of World War II, the United States did not destroy and disassemble either the Japanese state or the German state. What it did was it went after the government. So it forced, there was a denazification program in Germany. But otherwise it left the state intact. In 2003, because apparently people in the US can't read and don't know any history, the US decided that it would be a great idea to destroy the Iraqi state. And of course that plunged Iraq into absolute chaos because it had then had to rebuild itself from the ground up. And doing that, of course, didn't work, right? After 8 years, the United States was driven out of Iraq in a humiliating defeat, a crushing, humiliating defeat. And the reason is because by disassembling the state, you had no mechanism to control the country. Whereas in, Federal Republic of Germany wasn't created immediately, but the state apparatus was still in place in the period between the end of World War II and then the founding of the Federal Republic of Germany. And so there was still a mechanism by which you had police, you had fire departments, you had somebody running the utilities, right? Like the stuff that needs to get done was still getting done. Even though we, that first 3 years after World War II, we were thinking about exterminating Germany. We had a plan forced in place called the Morgenthau Plan. And its ultimate goal was to make sure that there was no Germany on the other side. Well, we changed our mind after 3 years. And that's why we founded the Federal Republic. Even in a genocidal moment where our goal was to get rid of the German people, our goal was literally to murder 25 million Germans. We got 7 million into the project and then lost our stomach for it and quit. Which is a good thing, right? Somebody will be like, "Oh, I can't believe we backed down." No, it's a good thing to lose your stomach in genocide. Even in that circumstance, we still left the German state intact. So my fear is that right now that the U.S. and Israel are targeting too much, right? You know what I mean? Like when you're trying to clip your fingernails, you don't want to get flesh. You don't want to get bone. You don't want to get muscle. You want to just get the nail. That's what your goal should be. Get the nail.
It seems like for most initial assaults on an area, you want to go for their missile defense systems or their offensive capabilities, but obviously, like, Iran has retaliated already, so it doesn't seem like the U.S. and Israel have taken out those capabilities.
I was just going to say one of the reasons that they haven't is because Iran's been prepared for this moment for decades. And as a result, a lot of the assets that they have are in really secure locations, buried in tunnels underground. Like they are prepared for this. This isn't a surprise to them.
Yeah, I guess we have been, telling them to build up for this moment for a very, very long time now. Especially,
I mean, it's like Netanyahu has said for 30 years, Iran is one day away from getting a nuclear weapon for 30 years. So what is that? What is 30 times 365? That's a lot of nuclear weapons there. I'm surprised. I didn't know there was that much uranium on the whole planet.
Yeah. So based off of like what you have seen and what you've heard, what do you think the next step is here? Do you think...
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Iran has retaliated. It's struck U.S. military bases across the region. I can't off the top of my head tell you how many states have been hit, but I want to say it's like 8, something like that. And Iran is now warning ships not to use the Strait of Hormuz. Now, as far as I know, they haven't mined it yet. They've been threatening to mine it, and they haven't officially closed it. They did it actually a few days ago. They temporarily closed a section of the Straits of Hormuz, saying that they wanted to do military exercises, and for safety reasons, they were temporarily closing a section. What's interesting to me is they haven't pulled the trigger on mining the straits. So, because that's a big step, and it's sort of an escalation. But so as of right now, I think the goal is to just retaliate for the sake of retaliating from the Iranian side.
Do you think the Strait of Hormuz is? I mean, it's a super important geographical point of entry into the Persian Gulf for both, enemies and allies for Iran at this point, right? So they would want to keep it open so that they can get materials in and out from China or Russia or what have you.
I don't think that's their priority right now, because anything that's coming from China or Russia would be a long-term thing. And if you don't have what you need right now, you're not going to have it. It's too late. Like you needed to have done all the prep work you needed. All the prep work for this moment should have already been done. And so I think for Iran, the question is how badly are they willing to go? Like, how far are they willing to go? And about 30% of the world's petroleum comes through the Straits of Hormuz. So if you shut it down, it is going to have a massive impact on the global oil supply. Even a short shutdown will have a massive impact. 30%. It's insane. 50% of the world's proven reserves are in the Persian Gulf, but they're not, obviously at maximum production level. So it's 30% of the actual material. And of course, Iran's been discounting its oil for years now and selling to China and Russia. So at the end of the day, again, like anything that they needed to get done needed to have already been done before this moment. And I think after the 12-day war last year, I think it's very unlikely that Iran has just been sitting here for 8 months not preparing even more than they were before. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they have deeper, larger tunnels with even more supplies in them.
Do you think that the notion that this strike has been to support the Iranian people in order to overthrow the current government, now that the strikes are what you said were on infrastructure, which obviously hampers both the military forces and any counter-military forces, the resurgence inside the country, because destroyed infrastructure is destroyed infrastructure. Nobody can use it. Do you think that notion that this is for the people still holds, or do you think that that is not quite accurate anymore?
Well, so there's a problem, and that's the history of the United States and the history of Israel. It is impossible for me to ever believe that the United States is going to do something to the benefit of another people, especially when you have a hyper-transactional government that literally just runs around saying, well, why? Why are we doing anything for you? I mean, we have a president that when a hurricane hit the U.S. Virgin Islands in his first term and Puerto Rico, he's like, when are these people going to take care of themselves? I need to talk to the president of the U.S. Virgin Islands. And it's like, you're the president of the U.S. Virgin Islands. It's scary that you don't know that. And then what are you talking about? And it's this why should I take care of the person? It's this mentality of the house next door is on fire. It's not my house. I should let it burn. And so then in the case of the United States, it's, oh, let's go steal the furniture before the house burns down. And so, yeah, I don't buy it for a second. What I'm hopeful of is that the Iranian people will use the opportunity anyway and take out their tyrannical state. The Islamic Republic has just absolutely ground the Iranian people and the Iranian society into the dirt. So I'm hopeful that at least can be something that can come out of this. I wouldn't be shocked if the Islamic Republic survives this, in part because it's shown so much resilience and durability. There have been so many times that people have gone, okay, this is it, and you're like, apparently, nope, that wasn't it. And if Israel and the United States sustain this for enough months, maybe they can do it. But if it's another 12 days, it's useless. This is just fired off a bunch of missiles, added to global warming, killed some people, blew up some infrastructure, and I don't know why. Are you invested in construction company stocks or something? Like I don't get what the point of that is.
Trump invested in construction and real estate? No.
Yeah, shocking. Maybe he's also invested in Raytheon and General Dynamics and wants to see those guys make some money.
Yeah, I mean, in order to sell more missiles and rockets, you need to fire some. I mean, that's not untrue. Hopefully that's not I'm sure that they're pretty excited about that prospect, but hopefully that's not the main reason. Also, we have to keep in mind Epstein files are kind of growing here in the U.S. Clinton is getting, he's going through the legal process against accusations against him. So it's looming. The American public is very focused on making sure that those people in power are held accountable. A better way to distract the American people by, going to war. I don't know if this is feels like the start of a war, but again, it could just be a less than 2 week thing. But we'll see. Do you think these motivations, like what I was talking about as distraction, like we talked about in our last office hours, do you think that's probably likely what's going on, or is this more of Trump and Netanyahu wanting to finally scratch that itch that's been bugging them for so long?
I think it's both. On the one hand, right, there's now this testimony that was not released by Pam Bondi that has still come forward that was obviously an attempt to bury it. And it is an account of a person who says she was in fact raped by Trump, and she was interviewed by the FBI in 2019. So
نحن هنا في قطاع غزة ظروفنا صعبة جدا بين خيام النزوح نناشد مؤسسة أمر
the fact that didn't come out in the initial release and now it has come out, I think sort of pushes the wag the dog hypothesis. Now, at the same time, Trump and Netanyahu have obviously been gunning to do this. They wanted to do this. It's what they find interesting is why didn't they do it 8 months ago? Like, why did they just stop? And there's some reason to think that Israel just sort of got to a point where it couldn't sustain it. You got to remember, Israel's a small state, so for it to sustain a prolonged conflict is really difficult. It's why it uses blitzkrieg tactics when it does war, because it can't. It doesn't have the ability to do a prolonged conflict. So, it tore a page out of Bewegungskrieg and does Prussian-style war tactics in an effort to make sure that it takes its enemy out quick enough that it doesn't have to worry about this long. 12 days was a long time. That's telling. So that's part of the issue, I think, why they didn't finish the project last time. What'll be interesting to see is if they have the staying power, they really are going to go for months. If I was Khamenei, I would just go hide in a tunnel and wait for this to be over, and just expect the United States and Israel to quit at some point. Actually, if I was him, I would have flown to Russia and hung out with Bashar al-Assad by now. But that's because I have a threshold where I'm like, this is not possible anymore. It's time to go, and I'm sick of abusing my people. But so on the one hand, there is the wag the dog thing, but here's the twist. I don't understand what the United States' end game is. Like, is it to bring in Reza Pahlavi? If it is, okay, how are you going to do that? Are you going to put boots on the ground? Is this the precursor to a ground invasion? We don't have a great track record post World War II of winning wars. By my count, we won the war in Grenada, and we defeated Panama in '89. And I think you can count the 91 war against Iraq as a win. But that's it. Everything else has been a catastrophic defeat. Well, maybe you can call the Korean War a tie. It's certainly not a win, and it's certainly not a defeat. So I guess it's a tie. But yeah, Vietnam was a catastrophic defeat, humiliating rout. Afghanistan was humiliating rout. Iraq was a humiliating rout. Like, I just don't. What? You're going to attack a country that's even bigger? Look, I don't understand. I don't understand what the end game could possibly be.
Yeah, the timing is interesting because you're right. They did stop after 12 days last summer. Now it's an election year. Primary voting is in a couple days.
Underway. Yeah.
So
early voting's already started.
Yeah, early voting is ended actually, at least in Texas.
Okay.
It's just March 2nd, which is it's on Monday. Monday, is that right?
Super Tuesday.
Or Tuesday.
Tuesday.
It's always on Tuesday. And yeah, it's just odd timing. But
yeah, today's Saturday. I lost track of time.
It doesn't seem like it's necessarily a great idea though, because this is something that I think most people don't want. They don't want to get into a major conflict and spend money. It's an interesting choice. So going back to what escalation might look like if this continues on the long run, what do you think will happen more on a? Well, let's go. What do you think will happen in Iran, and what do you think will happen on a global scale if this continues past 1 month?
So, one thing that an expert on Iran was telling me that we should probably just bring on the show next time and do a talk on Iran was that in the war 8 months ago, the 12-day war, that in the beginning the Iranian people were all excited and they were happy. And they were like, oh, finally we're going to get rid of this regime. But as the war dragged on and more people died, their opinion began to shift towards, we have to support the regime. And that's not unusual. That's exactly what happened in Germany during World War II. So 1/3 of the German population actively resisted the Nazis right up until about 1943. So from 33 to 43, for 10 years, 1/3 of the German population was in a state of active resistance. So they were doing things like not letting their children join the Hitler Youth. They were doing things like making sure that they, didn't contribute as much as they were supposed to the state. That actually should tell you a lot about, the German people and their sense of right and wrong, because the United States, I guarantee you, it's nowhere near 1/3 of the population currently resisting when they should be. I bet it's more like 13% or something like that. So what ended up happening is the United States began a bombing campaign, a horrific bombing campaign of Germany and actually just Europe in general. We spared 6 cities. We bombed everything else, including the cities from the countries that were liberating. And in the process, that the German people switched sides. That 1/3 that had been actively resisting went, "Oh my God, we're going to get genocided here," and they stopped actively resisting. It actually brought the Germans closer together. One of the tragic ironies is that when we bomb a city, initially its production, its output would go down, but then its output would shoot up. It would actually end up with more material output than it had before the bombing, because the population of people who were bakers and school teachers and, the guy delivering the mail who just lost a relative and their house is blown up and their job is gone went, "I might as well go work in a factory and make bombs because it's the only way we're going to survive this." And that's my fear for Iran, is that as the United States and Israel hammer Iran, at some point people are going to start to go nationalistic and they're going to start to go, wait, as much as I hate this government, I hate the guys bombing us more. And in the end, they could actually retrench the government instead of actually bringing it down, which should be really unfortunate. Or they could get really lucky and at some point Khamenei jumps on an airplane and flies to go hang out with Bashar al-Assad in Russia. And then Trump gets to run around going, "Look what I've done. I did something so amazing. Look what I've done." But here's another thing to notice. The United States created Pax Americana post-World War II. And the idea was that we're going to have a boogeyman in the form of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union was going to be sort of like this isolated trap thing. It didn't really work. The Soviet Union managed to, spread out and get into Cuba and Nicaragua and Angola, and so it didn't go the way that we wanted it to. Ethiopia, but nonetheless, that was the idea. The United States would kind of contain the Soviet Union in Europe, and then the rest of the world would fall under the United States' sphere. And the hope was that this would create opportunity for the United States to exploit brown and black countries and steal their resources, but it would also mean less war, that there would be sort of an order that the United States was imposing on the planet. When we look at the amount of wars during the Cold War, it really was a period of relative peace. I mean, I'm not saying that there wasn't a Vietnam War or a Korean War. There definitely was. And there was, the civil war in Angola and the war between Somalia and Ethiopia. There were definitely conflicts. But we compare it to the pre-World War period, pre-World War II period, or European countries running around the world smashing third world countries and forcing them into their empire, the amount of peace was relatively high. Europe wasn't in conflict. The conflicts that were happening were proxy conflicts between the United States and the Soviet Union. The countries weren't in the habit of running around attacking one another. Now we see wars breaking out all over the place. Azerbaijan attacks Armenia. Thailand attacks Cambodia. Pakistan attacks Afghanistan. It's the whole order that the United States spent all this time creating is just crumbling around our ears. And I think that's the real thing that's at stake here, is as the United States keeps doing these random wars, undeclared wars that don't have international sanction, we didn't go through some process with the UN, we didn't go through some process with Congress, that at some point we will start to see the entire structure of Pax Americana completely unravel. And I think that leads to the type of chaos we saw before World War I, and then you end up with a situation where one guy makes a mistake, and the next thing you know, there's a big conflict. So as nasty as U.S. imperialism has been, there was a benefit to it, and it was that there was a world that was a little bit less conflict-ridden than it is now.
So do you think this could lead to like a second age of imperialism or third age of imperialism where different states are trying to acquire land? I mean, we're seeing this with like Russia and Ukraine, which doesn't feel like a news story necessarily, but this, Israel is been frank about wanting to have its own little empire in the Middle East.
And Mike Huckabee totally agrees that that's a good idea. They should have the Nile to the Euphrates.
Yes. So do you think this I don't want to like catastrophize or anything, but we've thrown around the term World War III. Do you think it's to that level, or do you think it's more of a more regional empire proxy war type situation?
So I think what will happen is at some point somebody's going to make a mistake. And unfortunately, we have a really uneducated government in the United States that has antagonized its allies, alienated its allies.
Hi, I'm YouTube. And on YouTube, you're not allowed to say words like...
Well, I didn't catch that.
That's because...
Wrecked its alliances, wrecked its, its treaty system that it created. And it's talking like the British Empire in the 19th century, like, oh, we want this. This is ours now. We're going to go plant our flag there. And the United States does do some tone setting for the rest of the world. I honestly think it's one of the reasons why Thailand thought, you know what, let's attack Cambodia. We really want this old temple that they have, that the French gifted them. That's not fair. Let's go get it. And I think the United States has sort of set a new tone for the world that it's okay. And then Russia hasn't helped any, right? Russia's war in Georgia was 2008, and then now Russia's war in Ukraine that started in 2014 and then got escalated in 2022. Trump running around talking about we should annex Canada, we should annex Greenland, and then he even went so far as to say we should grab Iceland too. Although I think he meant Greenland, but we don't really know what's going through his brain. What we need to be doing is going the other direction right now, and we need to be getting together as a planet and going, okay, we have serious crises we need to be managing, and instead we've gone this bizarro path. That one mistake, one miscalculation, and next thing you know, we've got a real catastrophe. I mean, think about us. If when Cortez invaded Mexico in 1519, he had tripped and banged his head on a rock and died, the world would now be a completely different place. And, right? I mean, it's the whole butterfly flutters its wings in Nebraska and there's a rainstorm in China. I know it's usually said the other way around, but I felt like it shouldn't be. And it's chaos theory. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. It's a universe guided by chaos theory and complexity theory. And when you have so many variables on the table at the same time and you just start randomly pulling at them, something is bound to happen. And I don't understand this idea that we need to be doing this. Like, it's a really strange place to be in. Yeah, I just don't know. Somalia attacked Ethiopia, was it 1979, 1978? I don't remember the exact year. And the whole reason is because European imperialism had made it so that Somalis were in Ethiopia, Somalis were in Kenya, Somalis were in Somalia, Somalis were in Djibouti, and Somalia was like, what is this? We need to put our people back together. And they did this terrible catastrophic war. It blew up their country. To this day, Somalia is a wrecked place. They've never recovered from the tragic error of making this attack against Ethiopia. It doesn't take a lot to take what
All right, we're recording a bonus Pod Save the World episode because, as I'm sure listeners and viewers have seen, the United States and Israel are once again at war with Iran, so we're going to update you on everything we know as of Saturday afternoon. So this started at Saturday at 1:15 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 9 a.m. Tehran time. The U.S. and Israel launched airstrikes on Iran. The U.S. military is calling this Operation Epic Fury. It's so totally epic, Ben, that Trump launched the war from his country club in Florida. Targets so far, targets as well in the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain.
Totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or, in the alternative, face certain death. Finally, to the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass.
Okay, so Ben, let's pause there. Just get your reaction, sort of what you've seen so far and in sort of events in the world, and also Trump's speech. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's always reassuring to have a president launch an illegal and unnecessary war wearing a baseball cap in the middle of the night at Mar-a-Lago.
Yep,
but
that's where I
putting
wanted
that
to be.
aside for the moment, I think the headline here is that this is the regime change war, and we've walked up to this precipice with Trump like several times, and each time he took a more limited action, whether it was assassinating Qasem Soleimani or whether it was the 12-day war when he bombed nuclear sites principally. But this is clearly based on rhetoric and targets, like an effort to change the Iranian regime. Now, the problem with that, though, is that even though that's clear, nothing is clear about what the end game is, right? Even if the supreme leader is killed, the Iranian regime is a very deep regime. He mentioned the IRGC, the police, and the military. That's millions of people who are under arms in the Iranian regime. And so whether this devolves into civil conflict and chaos, or whether some IRGC-led regime emerges, we have no greater clarity today than we did before this began about how the U.S. sees this thing ending. And we do see already some of the consequences that could come from this war. We're only one day in, but we've already seen Iran, unlike last time where they showed some pretty calibrated restraint, it seems like they're firing missiles in all directions. They're trying to exact a cost on the Gulf countries for hosting U.S. bases, or just to kind of create a sense that, if we burn, you burn too. They're launching missiles at not just bases, at Israel as well. And so we're seeing the beginning of what could be a kind of regionalization of this conflict. And so this is a very dangerous moment. And I have no reassurance from Trump or anybody around him that there's a plan for how to land this plane beyond we're going to go in there and destroy as much of this regime as we can before it becomes kind of almost politically unsustainable for us to be bombing this country. Then we'll stop and, you Iranians rise up. But if those Iranians are massacred again, if it turns into a civil war, there's no plan B.
Yeah, it's not clear to me that Trump realizes that he started something that he's not able to stop, because Trump is doing a round of interviews. He's talked to NBC, Axios, a bunch of other outlets. He told Axios he has several off-ramps to end the conflict. One of the quotes was, "I can go long and take over the whole thing, or end it in 2 or 3 days and tell the Iranians, see you in a few years if you start rebuilding. In any case, it will take them several years to recover from this attack." And it's like, first of all, no, you can't take over the entire country unless you send in troops to occupy the country. And if that's on the table, you should probably tell us. Second, we don't know really if Trump is actually thinking about off ramps, or if Barack Ravid in this 5-minute call was like, "Hey, what's your off ramp?" And he was like, "I got a bunch of them." Trump also told Axios that he asked his team to compile every Iranian-linked attack around the world in the last 25 years, and clearly that was sort of reflected in the speech he made. But if you have to do that, it seems like you're really struggling to justify why this has to happen now. And I think all of that just speaks to your point, which is like, we have no idea what's going to happen next. This could end quickly, or this could go on for a long time. And by the way, thank you for watching this episode of Pod Save the World. Please subscribe on wherever you get podcasts or on YouTube, because we're going to be covering this story really, really closely, and we're not going to like mindlessly regurgitate fucking neocon talking points the way a lot of other news outlets are this morning. And it's just like, it's very hard to watch. No one seems to remember the Iraq War or be learning the lessons. So please subscribe to Pod Save the World. Ben, I also noticed that Reuters had a story that the CIA assessed before the strikes that even if Iran's supreme leader were killed in the operation, he would likely just be replaced by hardline figures in the IRGC. So, like, again, like, the end goal is not clear. And I noticed this morning, again, like, Trump has been lying about Iran's nuclear program and ballistic missile programs. Gideon Saar, Israel's foreign minister, said that this military action was urgently needed because, quote, delay would have allowed the Iranian regime to reach a level of immunity for its nuclear program, as well as to engage in the mass production of long-range ballistic missiles. That's just, it's false. That is absolutely a lie. Like, no expert, no one I've seen has suggested that Iran was on the cusp of like revamping its nuclear program.
Yeah, I mean, the war is illegal domestically and internationally. The war is unnecessary as a matter of timing. The threats that they're pointing to do nothing to explain. I mean, the fact that in that litany that Trump gave, he was talking about roadside bombs in Iraq 10 years ago. Is that a reason to go to war now? I mean, obviously those are terrible things that happen, but it's an absurd reason to launch a war now. The only new pretext they developed is this ICBM threat, which is totally false. Iran has long had an ICBM program. It cannot hit the United States with an ICBM, is nowhere near being able to do that, and doesn't have a nuclear weapon. And so it matters that this is being done under false pretenses with very little public support and no legal basis, because it's not a very strong footing to take the country into a war of regime change in a country over 90 million people. Now, we know Israel wants this. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu has been pushing for this for a very long time.
Yeah.
And he finally got this kind of window with Trump, because he sees that Trump is a guy that is willing to ignore Congress and public opinion. Trump's a guy who, frankly, has done what Bibi Netanyahu has wanted to do before, whether it was moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem or the 12-day war. And one thing that I was thinking about, Tommy, is that it doesn't matter how many days he bombs Iran. We are in a forever war with Iran. One way to think about this is the 12-day war was not a 12-day war. Like, this is still part of the war. Once you start bombing a country, like, this is the same war as the 12-day war that's happening. Just because you periodically stop bombing doesn't mean you're not in a forever war. And so Trump can spin it however he wants to MAGA supporters, from Tucker Carlson to his own vice president, who have the political identities based on opposing this. But the reality is that we are in this, and the world is going to see, whatever happens in Iran next, they're going to see as the responsibility of the United States and Donald Trump personally. And as we talked about, whether it's civil conflict, refugee flows into other countries, major energy disruptions in the Straits of Hormuz, periods of calm followed by periods of dramatic violence. I mean, this could go all kinds of ways. But the one thing we know is that Iran is now added to that list of forever wars, and it's the biggest country yet that we've tried to do this in, and we're doing it with no boots on the ground, and we're doing it in conjunction with Israel, which we've also never done. We've never done a regime change war, like, literally with the Israelis. So that is going to create impressions in the world too. And I just think, there's no real discussion of this by Trump.
And so, and to that point, I mean, there will absolutely be Iranians, I think, who are happy about the supreme leader being dead or the regime toppling. And I'm sure the U.S. and Israel will amplify those voices, especially, people in cities, people in Tehran who understandably hate the regime. But we have no idea what the majority of the Iranian people think, especially people in rural areas. We don't know how they'll react. We don't know what's going to come next if the supreme leader is in fact dead and there's a massive power vacuum and potential for civil war and other problems. So, I mean, it just feels like, this is all ahead of us.
Pod Save the World is brought to you by Factor. Cold days, big goals, no time to cook. Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs to eat well without the planning or cooking. Factor meals are made with quality, functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, No refined seed oils, meals that fit your goals and schedule, healthier eating, calorie management, more protein. Choose from a menu of 100 rotating weekly meals to keep things fresh and delicious through winter.
Morning. Here's the next few days.
Waves of strikes and try to make this war hurt for people in Israel and the United States, kind of, and the region, kind of over time. I agree with you. It's interesting. There's strikes on the Gulf countries, and they hit just about every one except Oman, and that was interesting. Oman was the one that was not hit. Some of them were just strikes at U.S. military facilities, and that makes sense, and no surprise. These other strikes that include like drone attacks, like as you referenced on places like Dubai and Bahrain, it does seem like that the message they're trying to send is, so long as we are under attack, you are not secure. And yes, they're taking the risk that certainly the Gulf governments now will probably feel potentially more inclined to allow the U.S. to use bases to attack Iran. Thus far, a lot of the Gulf countries have opted out of that, or maybe even participate themselves. But you also make the point that the U.S. doing this in conjunction with Israel, the publics in these countries will surely be mad at Iran for what they're doing, but also I think will blame Israel, who there's no love for in the region, as well as the United States for launching this war. And essentially this sense that the U.S. and Israel are involved in kind of a strategy of creating
hundreds
chaos
have only just
in the
come
region.
to me face to face.
That whether it's the strikes in Lebanon or Syria or Yemen or now Iran, that there's this kind of moving wrecking ball of chaos that is harming people. And we should be, that school.
Because Iranians, I think they correctly understand that Islam is a struggling civilization. But the answer to that question problem is, this is our civilization and we will bring it back on its feet again. The answer is not, then we'll quit. That we'll just jump ship and be another civilization. That's weak. That's sad.
Yeah, it's like it's losing yourself. And
absolutely.
And you see that like with the this is something that you see with the diasporas, that after one or two generations, the language is gone, the religion is gone, the identity is gone. Like they don't even if I look at my cousins, which I have many who are in the West, like a lot of them, they don't speak Farsi at all. They don't identify as Iranian, like maybe because they're half Iranian, because their parents didn't even marry within Iranians. And it's kind of, you're losing yourself. And then,
Absolutely.
As a Muslim, like the most significant thing is like, okay, you have no religion now. And it's like Iran, like these Iranians don't have anything that they believe in strongly. Like they don't believe in any religion. They can't really become Christian. Some try. There are some Iranians that try to, like they literally will dye their hair blonde, and they'll try to go to church, and they just, it doesn't work, because then they realize, being a Christian actually requires some like effort, some work, and this is foreign to me. So they quit that. They have no, they don't really believe in anything. So it's very sad.
That's so true. Now, I've seen maybe thousands at this point, I can say, actually many thousands of diaspora Iranians in my classes. We have 2 classes a week right here. We're at our center. We have Rumi circle and a Persian class circle. So literally hundreds have only just come to me face to face, let alone on the internet. And in Iran, I met a lot of diaspora Iranians who are visiting or living. And what I'll say, my general thing that I've taken away from it is that it's mostly religious or traditional. So not necessarily religious, but traditional minded people whose kids learn Persian. So I think if you did a statistical analysis, the vast majority of Iranian Americans who are able to read and write Persian at any significant level, and they're born and raised here, not the immigrants, are people who have religious parents, religious backgrounds. And it's not because the religion itself is teaching you Persian, but it goes along with it, this idea that your identity, your heritage is important. And ultimately, you find in America, if you don't have an ethno-religious component, or even just a religious component, you will lose everything. You'll just be melted into the pot, basically, and you'll just have no real identity to live with. I remember there was a guy on Twitter who said, we don't we underestimate how little the average secular mainstream American has. They're all living in year zero. You live in a house built 10 years ago, in a suburb built 10 years ago. You don't have any heirlooms. You have no heritage or culture or tradition. And that's where this emptiness of meaning in the country comes from. I mean, maybe I'm not religious in the way that everyone expects, or maybe I'm not the perfect Muslim, but I have this amazing heritage to reach for. And every time, in times of joy, in times of need, in times of curiosity, I have Ghazali and Rumi and Abu Hanifa and Bukhari. I have these amazing heritages. And even when you mentioned Christianity, you know, if I had to choose between, I remember Uthman al-Khamis, and I lived in Kuwait, by the way. I taught his nephew, nephew. And he would show me photos of him. And I hope if he's listening, he's doing well. He knows who he is.
The Wahhabis are going to love this.
Yeah, I know. No, I lived in Kuwait. I'm wearing Kuwaiti dishtash, actually. I used to listen to their durus all the time. I love listening to Salafis. I listen to all Muslims. People think I'm like some sectarian. I'm not. I actually find the Salafis more interesting and illuminating to listen to in the Arabic language. But Uthman al-Khamis said, talking about recent events, he says, al-kitabi, al-kafir kitabi, lid kafir ghair kitabi. And it says, ihna mal kafir kitabi. So it's like the idea is, if you had to choose between a non-Muslim who's at least has a book versus a full non-Muslim, you choose the book. So that to say, if a Muslim, or if an Iranian American is raised an atheist and becomes a Christian, from my perspective, that's a way leg up than to just be an atheist spiritually. But the problem is they don't become real Christians. So we have one guy, I won't mention him, but he's very controversial. One Iranian American I know who became an Orthodox Christian. But other than that, and Sohrab Ahmari is a serious Catholic here in New York. But other than those two guys, all the Iranian Christians, they're part of these like non-denominational Protestant sects where they're dancing and it's like cringe boomer white people. It's not serious, you know. At least if you were in a monastery in Greece chanting in ancient Greek, and I'm like, okay, you know, it's sad that you're not a Muslim, but that's a respectable tradition. You know, if you're in Rome doing the Latin Mass and you know you're reading Latin fiqh from like 2,000 years ago, that's at least respectable. I can say, okay, handshake, whatever, agree to disagree. At least you have something. But just the direction Iranians go, they just assimilate into just the most unremarkable American culture we have to offer. And it's just tragic to see.
It's not like Iranians, as you know, don't have a history of mixing. Like that's like you're describing it as kind of neighbors. Like we have Arab, Afghan, South Asian neighbors. But it's also a lot of mixing. Like it just genetically, I don't know if you've done 23andMe, but
I have
not. I have not either.
Yeah.
I'm worried about what it's going to reveal.
Right. They know your DNA now.
Yeah. But that kind of mixing, I guess, is inevitable, even like as we live in a globalized world, but there's just no like core of belief or tradition or heritage that is being held on to. And that's like, I think a big part of why you're appealing to a lot of people, not just Iranians, is because you're trying to stick to that in a way that's unique.
Thank you.
And I think that when it comes to religion as well, like there is, like you're mentioning Salafi or Wahhabi, and some of the, like outside of Iranians for a second, you have this idea of Islam as an abstract like set of beliefs.
No culture. Islam.
Yeah. Don't bring in culture, right? So that I think has a kind of stripping effect, because so much of Islam comes through the culture, whether it is like how your Pakistani grandfather practiced Islam, or your Turkish grandmother or Iranian grandmother, how she practiced Islam. Like, it's cultural, but it's also Islamic. It's
no, absolutely. My parents unknowingly gave me a Muslim upbringing. So growing up, we would go to Islamic centers and cultural events, but my parents were always wary of making me like too Muslim. They wanted to make sure that I could. They kind of inherently gave me. So they would say, don't eat hot dogs. And I would say, why? They wouldn't say, because in the Quran, God says, they would say, hot dogs are pork. They're the dirtiest meat. Look what Jews do. Jews are smart. They would never eat pork. Like, don't eat pork. That's gross. And it's like, Mom, Dad, I want to go on a sleepover. And they would say, sleepovers are what veiled people do. Like loose, like, literally loose is what it means. Like you go sleep at someone's house, you don't have a house. And I would say like, or even I remember I think one of the proudest things that my grandmother tells about me, or used to tell when she was alive, was that, in like 5th grade, dating, boy girl stuff starts to happen.
Yeah.
And you had those like phone directories. So my grandmother so proudly says, my grandfather too, that I got a call at home from one of the other like 3rd grade or 4th grade girls. I've never said this to anyone. And from the directory, they're like, "Can I speak to Ollie?" And I said yes. And there was like some school event or dance or something stupid. And I guess she was trying to get me to go with her. And I said, I would go, but I can't. It's against like my rules as a culture. Like I know that I'm not allowed to date. Dating is not allowed. And they were so proud of that. As an adult, I'd be like 25 years old. They would tell me like, Ali, he was so pious as like an 8-year-old. So these things are intuitively, you understand the adab, the way you do tarof, the way you do salam, the respect you have for elders, for, your host culture. Even these are all Islamic ethics. I mean, even my parents, like the attitude of some Muslims versus other immigrant groups. Now, this is in Islam, that when you enter society, you have an implicit social contract that as a Muslim, you have to honor it. Now, my parents never told me that, but what they would say is, "To inja mehmuni, inja to ra dadan, ehtaram bet dadan, beshun ehtaram bazar." You're a guest. They let you into this country, so show respect to the country that let you come here. And that's why, if you notice, Iranian Americans, they never cause trouble in American society. They're very kind of quiet, low key. They don't ever like get in American people's faces and say, "Oh, you stupid person, you American, colonized country." They don't do that. Iranians are very like, just chill with Americans. That's Islam. That's also Islamic ethics. You're a minority in their country. Don't cause drama. My grandparents would say, did Armenians in Iran come and tell Muslims we hate Islam? So why would a Muslim, they were talking about other Muslims, why would a Muslim go tell a Christian, I hate Christianity in America? They're like, show some adab to the people around you. So that's all Islam.
Yeah, it's just amazing how much overlap. Like I have the similar experiences, like going through, I went to in public school, like quite a large public school growing up in Texas. And even though they say Texas is like socially conservative, it is compared to other places, but in the big cities, they're more liberal.
They're all liberal in big cities.
Yeah. So that I was in a big city and more cosmopolitan, more multicultural. And I never did any dating, never went and danced with someone at a school dance or prom or anything. And I wasn't religious at certain times like that. I wasn't in the sense of like, oh, I'm not doing this because I'm a Muslim and this is Islam. It's because, well, this is not like what we do. Like this is not what
exactly.
we do. That's
not our cultural identity.
This is not like my parents would not approve of this. And I don't want to disappoint my parents. I have to be a good student, like focus on my grades. So that's,
absolutely. No, it's very true. I mean, I remember,
but when I got religious, like I didn't appreciate the extent to which my parents and my family made me who I am and protected me from these things. I just thought that, oh well, that's my parents don't understand religion, like
absolutely.
That kind of arrogance that sometimes people have. I'm not saying that that's how you were, but for me, reflecting now that I'm older, I appreciate so much like the cultural upbringing that I had.
No,
and
absolutely.
I'm trying to convey that to my children as well, like with more of a explicit religious instruction, but still, it's like the culture is so important.
Yeah, I agree. This is so wrong-headed. I've talked about it before. Muslims say Islam without the culture. They're together. It's a civilization. And that's also why I don't really worry about the state of Islam in Iran. People say, people have become secular as a reaction to the government. I always say, look, we have 1,300 years of inertia. It is our civilization. Before Islam, we were also very religious in the form of Zoroastrianism. We had Christians. We had other religions. And Islam is our culture. Iranians, they might superficially be secular, but when you look for anything meaningful in our culture, you're going to find Conference of the Birds, you're going to find Rumi, you're going to find Ghazali, you're going to find Ihya Ulumuddin. That's our heritage. There's nothing but that. We don't read Middle Persian. We're not reading those cuneiform, Mihi scripts. There's no fire temples that are really that active. There's a small community. I wish them the best. I don't hate them. People think I hate them. It's not a real alternative. The only actual meaningful religious tradition that we have access to, culture, is Islamicate, is Muslim culture. And Iranians are overwhelmingly this way. And I think even the people who bill themselves as secular, if you scratch, you'll just find they really just do have Islamic ethics. What they just mean is, I'm like an Istanbulite. I'm like a upper class Cairene. I don't have a beard. But, they have ghaira. They have notions of not eating pork. And they think drinking is disreputable. Like in Iranian weddings where people drink, a lot of times the men will go off in a corner and drink privately because they don't want to be perceived as drinking in front of women and children. Even secular people have this Islamic kind of, drinking is maybe not the best thing type of vibe to them.
You think that's the older generation, though? It seems like the younger generation are more rebellious and they want to like put it in your face. But like, with older.
I remember I was at a wedding in Tehran when I was a child, and some of the men just like went off into a corner and came back, and their faces were red and they were very happy. And my grandpa said they went and drank in the corner. That's why they went off and they came back. So we used to have this culture. Who knows? Yeah, like you're saying, people will rebel. But ultimately, people can't escape their temperaments, can't escape where they are, can't escape the history. You look around, everything is a mosque, everything's Islamic, everything's named after a person of Muslim background. Now, some of these protesters or whoever it was burned mosques. I don't think we're going to be like Anwar Hoxha's Albania, where you demolish every single last mosque. I don't think that's possible. I mean, where are people buried? Islamic cemeteries. Hafiz's grave has Quran on it. The Shah's grave is in a mosque, a Sunni Sufi mosque, I should say. It's named after Al-Rafai in Cairo. I mean, they go to worship and send salawat on Muhammad Reza Shah, who, despite having heretical beliefs, was ultimately a Muslim. I can't do takfir of him. He was a heretic in some ways, but he was a Muslim. So he would have tawheed at some level. He wouldn't want people doing salawat to him. But they're in a masjid doing that, so with a mihrab in the back. I went there, by the way. I went inside. Oh, yeah. With a mihrab and everything. So you're going to a masjid to do a cult about this guy who passed away.
Secular Islamic ritual.
Literally, they were saying Allahumma salli ala Muhammad Reza Pahlavi wa ala Muhammad. They were literally sending salawat. Unironically, wow. It's like some of them are cultish. I mean, not all of them, be fair to them. But even, I'm saying, in their rebellion against Islam, they're just doing Islam again. Or even the fact that Reza Pahlavi is their savior. That's a very 12er specifically thing. The idea of the munji, the savior, is going to come. It's just, instead of being the 12th Imam, it's just this overweight guy in DC or wherever, Maryland. So
that's quite amusing.
Yeah,
actually. So transitioning to this topic of protesting. So tell me, like, why did this happen at this time? Like, a lot of people think that, okay, well, these protests or riots,
because there isn't really like a sweet deal for them. The deal is you defect, but then we'll kill you at the end anyway. So why would they defect? So I don't think, unless you see cracks form, on day 10 called me crying. And he said, I just threw up. I'm losing my mind. He was my best friend in elementary school and middle school. And now he's dead. And the school I went to is dead. And my neighborhood is destroyed. So people's opinions can change based on what happens. The other issue is the moment finished. Like on Saturday and Sunday, when the protests were at their apex, when the majority of the carnage was happening, I think if America had even done a symbolic strike, it might have given more qawwat qalb, as we say, like heart strength to the protesters. Like, oh, they got our back. I mean, Trump said help is coming, in effect. But then you have like a prime minister who can take the L's and make the decisions that are unpopular. Some air from America now. Like, it's so tiring to have to just explain norms that were just normal 20, 30 years ago. Just the society has changed, the culture wars, the drama, even something as unrelated to Islam as the racial climate. It's so dragging and so tiresome. It's just, living in this society is just really a drag nowadays.
What do you mean racial climate?
Just like everyone's on edge. You can't say anything. You can't make a joke. You have to constantly walk on eggshells. It's just like everything, with gender, with race, with economics, with the culture wars, with politics. Everything is just so tiring. Everything is a war. It feels like it's drummed up on purpose to just distract us from whatever is happening and whatever they're engineering for us in the world. But it's just so refreshing to go in the street in a country like Turkey or Iran or Jordan or Kuwait, the Muslim countries I lived in, Egypt. Just like everyone has the same norms. Everyone just kind of has the same religious belief generally. Secular people are respectful. There's no like giant conflict in the air about who's an immigrant and who's not. And oh my God, did you say the right term? And it's just I insulate myself in America, honestly. I barely go out. I barely make friends with people who aren't kind of a similar background to me, so we share understandings. It's just so tiring to live in a society where everything is a conflict. Everything is a culture war. Everything is oh my God, you didn't say this the right way. And it's just like, I'm so tired of it. I used to censor myself to kind of avoid annoying people for these considerations, but I just can't live this way, man. Like, I want to just go out and just be normal and just breathe and not have to worry about, oh, this is happening. Trump did this. Trump said that. We're going to go to war over this. You know, like, you live in Istanbul. It's like, oh, I'm just drinking my coffee. Yeah, the inflation's bad, but like, okay, whatever. Life is normal. It's like a normal life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
man.
things are getting really, I think, feisty in the US, and economically things are also taking a downturn. So it might be just not worth staying here, like, economically. Then why else would you stay? Like, the culture is really disintegrating.
No, absolutely.
As you're mentioning, and it's like the safety issue. I don't know where you live, if safety is a
I live in
concern.
Harlem, New York, so I'm very acutely. I was on the subway train and it broke down for 30 minutes yesterday. And there was a guy who was homeless who was just screaming, running around up and down, throwing stuff, screaming, shouting. He wasn't harming anyone. He was clearly just mentally unwell. But I was just sitting there thinking, oh, if I had a child right now, I'd be very worried. So, I mean, I'm from Detroit. My wife is from Upper Manhattan, Harlem area. So both of where we're from is like that. And you mentioned children. I didn't directly answer. I'm also worried, what languages will my kids speak? Will they grow up hearing Azan? Will they have any cultural influence from Islam? You know, will they just be like Americans and have nothing? Say like, oh, you know, like, I met a lot of Persians, and I remember I met a girl in school who's, I think her name was like Haley Alawi or something like that. Alavi. She was like, oh yeah, like, they called her out in school in like 6th grade, like, Haley Alavi. And I was like, Alavi, what the heck is that? And I looked at the list, the roster, and it was like, I was like, oh, Alavi, are you Persian? So I went up to her, I said, are you like Iranian or Turkish? She's like, oh yeah, like, I think my grandpa's dad was like Iranian, but then he like moved to Russia, and then he like moved to Germany. So I was like, will that be my descendants? So they're just like, oh yeah, I think I like, yeah, this book, oh my, like, they'll look around and they'll find, this is my book, by the way, it's a Rumi translation. They're like, they'll dust it off and be like, what's this, mom? And they'll be like, oh yeah, my grandpa, he was like a Muslim, you know, that was a religion back then. And like, you know, he in America, and he was like a Sufi, and like, yeah, he had this book. I don't know. I didn't really hear much about it. He was old when I was born, and he died. So like, that's depresses me to think about that future. So I don't know.
Yeah, it depresses me as well. Yeah, everyone go check out the book.
Thank you.
But it's a depressing thought, but I think a lot of people don't consider that when they're figuring out where to live and where to move and how to live their lives, like day-to-day lives. I mean, even you're taking steps, like you dress a certain way, your house is a certain way, like or who you marry, like your wife. All of those factors are make a big difference. But even then, like, we have to ask ourselves, is it enough? Like with my kids, they're being homeschooled. I taught them Farsi, like they can speak Farsi, they can read and write Farsi. They have a sense of Iranian culture.
Excellent.
Obviously, they're practicing Muslims, but is that going to be enough for their children to keep on like their Islam or their identity, their heritage? It's very disturbing.
I remember one time, I was going to say, moving you, it's still not enough because the West somehow finds a way to drag you back or annoy you or something. I remember you were debating someone years ago. So I've been aware of your work for a very long time. I even remember when you broke away from that. I don't want to get into it. It's not important. But I remember like when you first were appearing on Facebook and whatnot. And your videos actually were helpful in me kind of understanding liberalism and American society and atheism, because I remember I was just kind of liberal-minded person. I was, religion. And you kind of helped me think about these things in a more intellectual way. It's amazing. We've come full circle. Now we're speaking to each other. But I remember in a debate you had, someone said as a gotcha, and I hate these gotcha. This is one of the dumbest ones. Why don't you just go live in another place? As if just because I believe something, I can't live where I was born. But he said, why don't you live in Qatar? I think it was like David Wood or Armin Nava, one of these losers.
Yeah.
And you said, well, I'm American, well, I have parents, family, fair. And I love that Qatar, I mean, not love, but it's just fascinating. It's too good to be true that Israel bombed Qatar. So they say, oh, go live in Qatar if you want to be a religious Muslim. And it's like, well, Israel will just bomb me there. Or go live in Iran like I did. They say, go live in Iran. Well, I did that and my bank accounts were shut and I couldn't make money to feed myself. And they say, go live in Turkey. And once Israel regime changes Iran, then Israel will regime change Turkey, or go live in, this country and a coup will happen there. It's like, you can't even pick a Muslim country because if you go there, like in 6 months, you'll get drone striked or there'll be a coup or a revolution or your bank accounts are frozen or like the secret police, the secular secret police will come at your doorstep and say, brother, why did you go to Jummah? Why did you go to Zohar? Like I had a friend, he lives in a Muslim country. I won't name it. You can guess. He went to Fajr too many times. And the secret police came to him. They said, "Why are you going to Fajr prayer? What are you doing at Fajr every day?" He's like, "I don't know. I'm a Muslim." Is that allowed here to be Muslim? Of course, brother. Of course it's allowed. You're the wrong type.
Yeah, that kind of influence is purely foreign. Like I think all of the secret police, like they monitoring Muslims, like putting this kind of pressure, that wouldn't exist. Like that kind of scrutiny on Muslims wouldn't exist if it weren't for imagine for just China that was involved like in these countries as opposed to the US and Israel. Like they wouldn't have as much of a concern, like, okay, these are religious Muslims, what? Like all we care about is economics. But when it comes to US and Israel, like they're deeply concerned about Islamism and Muslims being too religious. So they have to pressure these governments to monitor the population and crack down. And now they are like these social credit type systems are being implemented where even like your purchases, like, oh, this person is avoiding like buying alcohol, or like this person is like what he's purchasing is giving us these signals that he might be an extremist. So it's that's really, I think, the center of the problem.
No, you have to live through these indignities. I remember one time a Tunisian said, in the era of the really strict secularism, religious Muslims used to put like those like thin bottles of alcohol, they're like thin and small, like for a pocket, in their glove compartment. So when they would get pulled over by the police because they had like a beard, the police are suspicious. When they open to get their papers, they have to remove the alcohol bottle to get to the papers. The cops would see there's like a fifth of alcohol. They were like, "Oh, okay, he's a drinker. It's okay. He's a good person." And it's like you live through these indignities as a Muslim. You go to a Muslim country. I had this experience in a few Muslim countries where I was pulled over by the police and they said, "Where are you from? What are you doing?" Because of the way I look. Why are you here? How long are you visiting? Kind of very inquisitive. Like, what are you doing in the mosque? Why do you dress this way? Oh, you're Iranian. What is an Iranian? You're just like, dude, I'm a Muslim. Can I just live in a Muslim? Can I just be at peace here, please?
Anyway, it's depressing to think about. Like we're just used to it. Like we're used to it, but it's kind of like an entire world has been taken away from us. Like
no, really,
Islamic world.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Sometimes when I reflect on it, I feel like a deep sense of loss. Like I can't live.
It's very depressing.
Even my father or my parents lived, or let alone my grandparents. So
they lived in a world that was stolen from us.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, how can we, for our children, like try to bring that back? I think that's like what motivates me ideologically, and that's kind of my compass for the kind of work that I do, is like trying to bring back that world for my children and grandchildren, inshallah. Okay, so I want to know more. Do you have time? Yes.
Yeah, I have time. Yeah.
Okay, because I really would like to know more about your interest in poetry, and why do you have classes? Obviously, you've written a book, and one book or multiple books.
So I have this one. It's 100 poems. I'm working on another book of 100 poems. The rough draft will be done in a couple days, but then I have to go over and edit it. So it's been in the works for over a year. So the old translations are old. I have to look at them again, but it's in the works, inshallah, the number 2.
So you selected 100 the most passionate poems. So how do you define passion?
So the publisher really did that. They said basically the only way to market this is as like a book of love poetry. So I said, okay, I'll pick 100 poems that have some sort of like romantic connotation to them. But people totally misunderstand medieval Islamic poetry. So they kind of read the superficial level of it, and they come away with one reading, but it always has a spiritual meaning to it. So that's a lot of generally speaking, whatever you see on the front or the back of a book, and the first and last page is just the publisher's. This will make it sell better. But ultimately, I hope that if you read the poems, you'll see that there is kind of a deep Sufi meaning. Now, of course, it's not to everyone's liking, Sufism, which is fine. But I love Rumi. I find that, so when I was in Iran, the school said that your literature performance is terrible. They said, you're fine, you speak Persian well, whatever, like you learn to read and write, good for you, and you're doing okay academically or catching up. But, because Iran's system is different. But your poetry is terrible. Like, you're failing literature class. Because I never studied classical Persian. The kids had a big background and time to catch up, or they had just been learning it. So I went and bought a poetry book, and my grandmother was going to help me study. And it was Omar Khayyam's poetry. He's also very misunderstood. People say he's an atheist. In his Persian poetry, he comes off as one. But in his Arabic poetry, he's pretty orthodox, actually. So I studied with him, and then I really saw that not only was it a opening to the heart and soul of Iranians as a people, they're always quoting poetry and talking about poets. Also now I found Turks, Arabs, Pakistanis, we're all into poetry. We're always quoting poems, our WhatsApp bio, our posts. It's always this poetry, that poetry. Iqbal said, Faiz said, this guy wrote, that guy wrote. And I also found it was a window into that world that you and I lament that doesn't exist, the pre-modern Muslim world that was just ripped away from us by colonization and whatnot, that when you read those poems, you close your eyes and just think about it. It's like you're there. When I read Attar's Tadhkirat al-Awliya, his descriptions of the saints, and for some people listening, you might be interested, he has the 4 Imams in there. So when I read the life story of Abu Hanifa told in medieval Persian by Attar, when I read Ghazali's Kimya Saadat, when I read Rumi's Masnavi, it transports me into a world that I can't access anymore. So for a moment, I can close my eyes and sit in this room and think, I'm in Baghdad with Abu Hanifa. I'm in Medina with the Sahaba. I'm in Khorasan with the scholars who made, Hanafi Islam, Bukhari, all these things. I'm with Ghazali in his room in the Karvansarai. It transports you into that world. It gives you access to their consciousness. That world we want to revive, what was it even? How do we revive it without knowing? So these texts, of course, you spend your life studying books as well, without access to these books, we don't know where we're going.
Is there a particular work or verse that really affects you in that way that comes to mind? Not to
I
put
think
you
the
on the spot.
Masnavi. Yeah, no, it's fine. The Masnavi is probably the greatest, I think, work of Persian literature. It's Rumi's magnum opus. It's 6 books. And every few pages, there's a new tale from medieval, pre-modern Islamdom, the era of the Sahaba, because he wrote in the 1200s, the last 600 years of Islam for him, he writes about. And it just, every story transports you into a new level of wisdom. And Rumi has truly something for everything in life. There's a very funny passage where sometimes some of these manosphere guys, or if you've spoken to them before, right? They would like some of what Rumi writes. Rumi wrote as an advice to an unmarried man. He said, women are of 3 types. He said, the women who are unmarried will be fully devoted to you if you marry them. Unmarried and never married. They will be fully devoted to you because that's all they know. And a woman who has been married but is now divorced will be halfway devoted to you because she is mentally occupied by her previous marriage and she'll be occupied by you. And a woman who has a child and a divorce will be never fully engaged with you because a mother's first instinct is to have a child. And unless she has a child with you, she will never be fully committed to you. So in Rumi, you find this men's advice type of thing. But then you also find, Rumi says that more than men, women share a sifa with God and that they are creators. So that when you interact with your wife, you should be in awe of this, that God has lent them one of his attributes that you don't have. And that a man who truly is possessed of a soul, who's really ensouled, he will be gentle with his wife. And that only an animal attacks his partner. So in Rumi, you find magnitudes. You find the Sneeko Andrew Tate advice. And then you also find the blue-haired feminist as well in Rumi's book. And it's all connected to Islam. It's all coming from the Hadith, Quran. Almost every passage of Rumi, every other one it seems, it says, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الله في كتابه الكريم. Like you find Islam, the world, Persian culture, our history. It's a roller coaster. It's amazing.
Yeah, the kind of references that are found in Rumi, like if someone who's familiar with Hadith or the Quran will immediately pick up, like, okay, this is what he's referring to. So it's infused with that.
I have a whole book. I hope to God the Americans and Israelis don't bomb it, and I'll never get to it, called Ahadith Va'ayat Masnavi. And it's massive. And it talks about how it seems like every other page has a reference to the Quran or the Hadith or the stories of the Sahaba in ways that are very subtle. Even things like Bani Adam Azay Yekdigarand. That Sadi has this very famous poem. It's in the UN where he says human beings are all parts of one another. And if one piece of our human body feels pain, all the other pieces feel that pain. And if you don't feel that pain, then you are not a true human. I'm embarrassed to say I was so old when I found out, it's a hadith. I was just flipping through a hadith like Bukhari, And it almost used the same word, udhu, like that the Prophet ﷺ said that human beings are all parts of one body. And I thought, wow, even this secular humanist Persian is getting this from Bukhari. This is
the
hadith here.
The hadith, I think, refers to like the ummah.
Muslims. Yeah, it does refer to the
yeah.
ummah, yeah. and so Sa'di, maybe he made it a little bit more broad, so that's why Persians like it. But again, where does this humanism come from? Where does this mercy, this genius, this worldliness, this culture, it's all rooted in the Quran and the hadith and this civilization we call Islamdom. It's not in the ether, it's not floating, it didn't just drop from the sky. You know, it's from this civilization. It would be a shame for us to turn away from this.
So just looking at some of the chat, someone is asking you, what's your review of Sa'di's work?
Sa'di is an excellent thinker. He's a great moralist. If you read the Golistan, you'll find excellent. It's probably one of the best simple books of Islamic ethics that even a child can understand. And it's like year one curriculum in madrasas in the Ottoman world, in the Persianate world, in the Mughal, Central Asian, Timurid world. Sa'di's great. I think in terms of his love poetry and reflections, I think maybe Rumi and Hafiz are a bit better. But Sa'di's life advice is second to none in Persian, of course. And again, it's all going back to Hadith, Quran, Islamic ethics. It's that everyone benefits from it. I would recommend anyone to read the Golistan of Sa'di. You won't be sorry. The advice has suited me so well in life.
It's great. And there was another chat, but I lost it where it was. It's okay. And what do you think about like the blasphemous dimensions of some of these poets, this poetry, and like how do you understand it? Like what is the because it seems like there is this aspect of
absolutely
that the poetry there that is well known, like drunken Sufi type of statements. And I don't know, there's maybe some element of that in Rumi. It's not as
there is,
as others. But how do you explain it and understand it?
Rumi himself says in several places unambiguously that it's a metaphor. So he says, "Masti as veju as bango me maju." Seek drunkenness from the divine, not from cannabis and wine, or literally from him, not from cannabis drinks and wine. And then he says in several other places explicitly that this wine, he says, "Mo mastabade na mastabade mansurim, na mastabade angurim," or something. We're drunk on Mansur al-Hallaj's wine, not from the wine of grapes. Or Ibn al-Faris says we were drunk before vines were created in the world. Now that explains that it's a metaphor. Why is that a metaphor? Because Sufi poetry started from court poets who did tawbah and left the court. So people like Sana'i, like not Rumi specifically, but like Sana'i, they used to write for the sultans, and the sultans had drinking parties, and again, they were secular rulers. So they would leave the court, but they would retain that imagery, which explains why you'd see talk of parties and wine and music. It doesn't make sense. Now, if that turns people off, that's fine. That's totally acceptable. Now, that's just important for people to understand it's not literal. What about the heretical elements or the deviant elements? So what I will say is their understanding of hadith was very weak. It's an unfortunate reality that the hadith studies, give credit where it's due to my Salafi brothers, they actually did instigate hadith investigation in a very good way because hadiths were very bad in the past. Al-Ghazali, as great as scholars he is, he quotes false hadith in his work because they didn't have good hadith study back then, like now with the internet and all these books, and everyone can travel everywhere, and we have more modern methods at looking at manuscripts. Manuscripts are discovered, so you find false hadiths. I can't lie, it's true. Another issue is that these people lived in a time when theological debates were still ongoing. So they are very polemical theologically against one another. Like Attar attacks the Mu'tazilites, Rumi attacks the philosopher. The Salafism wasn't really like a thing then, so you don't really find that any mention of Atharis, but they would have attacked them if they exist. They attacked the 12ers. So they have a very particular theological and aqidah, fiqh, etc. viewpoint. And they're humans, ultimately. We don't create an idol, and that's the beauty of Islam, is we don't worship humans, right? So Rumi's a human. I'm totally fine to say if you say, hey, this passage is not acceptable, that's fine. He's a person. It's just like even Abu Hanifa, I think he said, إِذَا أَصَحَّ الْحَدِيث فَهُوَ مَذْهَبِي. If the hadith is correct, that's my madhab, not what I said. If you find a better hadith after I die, follow that one, not what I said. So I think Rumi, inshallah, he's a Hanafi, would probably say that same thing, that if I said something wrong in the Masnavi, ignore it and take what's good. Always, from everyone, all places. Take the good, leave the bad.
So how would you tell a beginner or advise a beginner to, if they want to really get into this kind of literature, how should they start? Obviously, you're offering courses, but beyond that, or putting that aside, like how would they go through that?
I would say they should have some sort of understanding of what the medieval Muslim world looked like. So short of me being there in my courses, I think there are texts where you can kind of immerse yourself into what is a world of sultans and of city-states and no modern borders. And, before the West really took over the East, what was life like? We even talk about secularism and religion. These ideas didn't exist then. What was identity? The general trajectory of the Persianate world. You kind of need to situate yourself a bit. That helps. But you can also just pick up a simple book like the Golistan of Saadi, where it's a very simple read. It's short. The anecdotes are very small, and they will give you a kind of an image into, I think maybe that's the best book to start with, Golistan of Saadi, and it's available PDFs. It's been online for ages and a bunch of good translations. And it's very easy and simple language, and you get a sense of what Islamic ethics, what the world was. He talks about the world, right? He's giving you anecdotes, stories. And from there, I think if you feel you want to investigate further, the Masnavi is very good. It's been translated by Alan Williams, by Javad Mujaddidi, among others. Very easy to find. And in the Masnavi, you will find some of the Sufi stuff that not everyone loves. But the good news is you can just ignore it. Rumi is not giving you theological commandments. If Rumi has like a mistaken belief from someone's perspective, you can just ignore it. Just take the wisdom of the stories. Take the worldly wisdom, the nuances, the way you should approach life. And again, with all Muslims, you're always going to find good and bad. Like there's no scholar who is perfect. Even people who in hindsight we love. Imam Abu Hanifa was controversial in his life. Imam Bukhari was controversial in his life. All the four imams were controversial. They weren't always beloved by everyone. You and I are controversial. So anyway,
I don't have a problem with Sufism. So like that aspect of it, and I agree with your perspective. Like this is literature that should be studied, and every culture has poetry. And that's such an important part of even like the mu'allaqat,
a big part of their public life. So I think Islamic society had a healthier attitude to these things, Frank. And maybe that'll make some people hate me. That'll make, oh my God, he's so terrible. Can you believe he said that? But I don't know, the way that Western society is going, can any Westerner look at their society and say we're socially healthy, we're culturally doing all right? I think they're dying with these culture wars. I think our way was better, honestly.
Another aspect of it is that you preserve people's iman, because there are so many examples of these kind of ex-Muslims, they left Islam. And they said, well, why did you leave Islam? I was like, well, I believed in Allah. I believed in the Quran, everything. I prayed and fasted. But, I didn't like the fact that I can't have a dog. So I left Islam because I want to have a dog, for example. I can't have a dog in my house. It's like, is that a reason to leave Islam? It's something sinful. Can't you be a Muslim and recognize that, okay, you're sinful without just abandoning the whole faith because of that one issue? And it seems to be pretty common. And I think it's coming from this mindset that is rooted, maybe it's racial, maybe it's just cultural in the West. But I think it's important, this distinction.
There's this completely different idea of what it means to be part of a religion. So in our part of the world, religion is part of your identity. So you're just a Muslim because you're born a Muslim. Whereas in the West, they view it as something to aspire to or a state of perfection. So when you ask someone, are you a Christian? They'll say, no, I'm not. And you'll say, well, your parents were married in a church and you were baptized and you were given a Christian name. So why aren't you a Christian? Like, well, I don't go to church every Sunday and I'm not perfect, so I can't claim I am. They view it as aspirational. So a lot of Muslims in the West are infected with this idea that Islam is also this aspirational religion, that if you can't just be a perfect Muslim, then be an atheist. And there's also this Persian proverb, Kafir hamero ba kish khud pindarad, which means a disbeliever thinks everyone else is a disbeliever. So if you're not a perfect Muslim, then you might as well just stop being a Muslim. What's the point? And you have some people here come to me and they say, I'm coming to the gathering every Wednesday. I have a Rumi gathering. We sit and read Rumi. I give durus about tasawwuf and we talk and whatnot. We share a meal. And inshallah, I think it's a halal gathering for Muslims to come to. There's no alcohol. It's a socialization hour in Manhattan that's for Muslims. And they say, I'm in the whole. I like the whole thing, and I love Rumi, and this is great, and like the praying and all that. But like, sometimes I drink, and I'm like, okay, you're human. You can be a Muslim still. You don't have to leave Islam just because like you had an alcohol. Again, it's not good. It's haram, but we abstain from it. But that doesn't just like put you in hellfire in Judgment Day. Like you don't just get kicked out of the ummah because you're not perfect. Who's perfect over here? It's a very wrong-headed way of thinking about religion. I mean, no one's a Muslim if we think that way. Who's a Muslim at that point? Everyone's imperfect.
Yeah, I think that's everyone is aspiring. Everyone is trying their best,
Exactly.
and that's what like jihad of the nafs, like that is a real concept. Obviously, it's been kind of the concept of jihad has been hijacked a little bit for political reasons, but there is a sense of you struggle with yourself, you struggle with your vices, and everyone has to deal with that. That's why we have forgiveness. That's why we have tawbah. And Allah knows that we are imperfect, that we sin, and that we turn to Him in forgiveness. That's a major part of being human. It's a major part of being a Muslim. So I appreciate that perspective as well. And another along the same theme of race, I think this was a really insightful video that you put out recently about you're making this analogy with Americans viewing themselves as being temporarily poor millionaires. And that's like a very, I had heard that before, that this is how Americans view themselves. They view themselves as all being essentially millionaires. They just might be going through temporary rough times where they're working as a janitor or they're working as a garbage man or whatever. But in the same way, Iranians are temporarily brown white people. And that's was such a amazing connection that you made. Can you please explain that? Like, how are Iranians temporarily brown?
Yeah, so it's this aspirational idea that in the past, I mean, it's a little bit of a joke. I mean, in the past, we were white, right? And then the brown Arabs and yellow Asians, Turks came in, the Mongols attacked us, and we had miscegenation happen, and then we became brown or something like a light brown, caramel color. And then after that, we hope that maybe in the future gene editing can edit away the impure genes and make us white again. So we're temporarily brown, only in this century or two left. Maybe like we'll have a 1,000-year stretch of brownness. But the joke is that Iranians, we aspire to whiteness in America. We would hope that we could be counted as white or pass as white or man white time, like we would say. You check off white, right? You're white. It's thumbs up. But ultimately, we're not, right? We're an ethnic people. We are from the Middle East. We're from a hot desert country, Muslim country. Our neighbors are Pakistan and Iraq. We're not white in the social sense that Americans mean. I mean, yes, we're light-skinned. We are Indo-European. So, I mean, we're cousins with what we call white people today. But socially, the meaning of that word has a particular context in America. It means like Western, European, Christian. It has a very particular context. And that's why, actually, I think Christians from the Middle East are more plausibly white passing after like 1 or 2 generations. They have those similarities. But as long as you're a Muslim person, it's not possible, a Muslim background with your last name like Muhammadi and Shariat Zadeh. It's funny, some of these Persians, like Alika Lebon, I think her last name is like Hujjatul Islam or something like that. And I think John Cena's wife her last name is Shariat Zadeh, like Sharia born. So some of their last names, it's like they have a dog and they're Christian now, but then their last name will be like Hadood amputation implementer or something like that. Someone should make a meme. There's the joke that Lebanese Christians, they're like George or Pierre, and then their last name is like very Arab. So secular Persians, they have like their name is Kevin, and then their last name is just it's like Ayatollah, Ayatollah Kufar executioner, it's like something crazy. So, but this also influences how Iranians place themselves, like, and everyone laughs because we know that everyone else knows that we are brown, but they know that we're never going to be part of Europe. They know that Europe will never see us as one of them, that like we hope that Europeans will be so scandalized by what's happening in Iran. But I try to explain to Iranians, dude, they don't care. For them, brown people getting bombed is just another day. It's just Wednesday. They don't care. We're not white. So it causes us to view ourselves, to miscalculate improperly, view ourselves improperly, miscalculate what Iran is, what Iran can be, what it should be. And it also creates this insanity of when you think you're something that you're not, you're in this constant disconcordance. And the funny thing is that the Persians who could actually pass as white, like you are so white passing, don't want to be white. You want to be Muslim. But then the ones like Reza Pahlavi, like, have you seen this meme where Khomeini's grandson looks like an Aryan Ubermensch? Have you seen Khomeini's great-grandson?
No, I
So
haven't seen
Khomeini's
it.
great-grandson, people often put him in memes of like white Muslims. He looks like the whitest, most Nordic person on earth. And then the current Pahlavi claimant is like the most Arab brown. You've seen his face. He's like so brown and so Semitic looking even.
Yeah. Yeah, facial features are very Semitic. With
Yeah. So
Pahlavis.
you and Khomeini's grandson, who look white, want to be ethnic, want to be Muslim. You care about being who you are, but the people who look super ethnic are like, no, we are like French, but in Middle East, and it's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, that's funny. I didn't know that his great grandson looked Nordic. Is that because of
Wait,
mixing
so-
or well, Khomeini?
No. It's basically just
Let me look it up.
genes just mix around in weird ways. But if I send you a photo of him, you would think he's just like the whitest white guy. Here, I will WhatsApp this to you, and if you could put it on the stream, I think everyone will find this exceedingly funny.
Yeah, let me.
And he used to be a bit of like a well-liked person before the vibes with the government got a little bad. But here, great grandson. There's a picture of him at Hajj where he just looks like a Bosnian guy. He doesn't look Middle Eastern.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
he
so
kind of
he's-
looks like Khomeini actually.
He does,
Have you
but
seen
he looks
younger
so
younger
white.
pictures of Khomeini?
Anyway,
That's
and
actually
then
very interesting. Hold on, I'll pull it up.
his descendants, they're so white looking. It's actually kind of cartoonish. Like you couldn't make it up. Oh man.
Where'd it go?
Anyway, so race is ultimately what you make of it. This guy, he looks white, but he's the grandson of the Ayatollah who founded the Islamic Republic. So, race is ultimately, it's not in our soul. It's something we've constructed as a civilization. But yeah, anyway, that's the great grandson of the supreme leader, the first supreme leader of Iran. Anyway,
Yeah, that's I hadn't seen this before. This was pretty.
doesn't look quite Middle Eastern. Anyway,
Yeah. Let me. So then, you're saying the children of Pahlavi or himself, like
himself. So the current claimant, Reza Pahlavi, he looks so. There's nothing wrong with that. To me, he looks like an Iranian uncle. I love that. I love his phenotype. He looks like us. But it's just funny that he is like the Western aspirational one, and he looks so ethnic and brown. But then the ones who want to be Eastern and Islamic, they look so. So you couldn't make this up. So anyway,
I want to bring up the contrast. I think just to really.
Yeah, I sent you a few pictures of him. So
give the audience.
the one on the left is the one who wants Sharia, and the one on the right, I guess it'll be pulled up, is the one who wants Iran to be Western. It's a very kind of peculiar situation we have. Oh man, yeah. So this is the more ethnic looking one. He's the Western one, and then the one who looks Western is the secular one or the religious one. So make it make sense.
Yeah, I don't know why I can't put both on the screen at this.
Yeah, it's all right. You find everything in Iran. You find every phenotype. You find Turkmen, Hanafis who look Asian, who look Uyghur, and you will find people in the south who are African or Khaliji Arab. You will find people who look like you and I do, a little lighter, a little bit more white passing maybe. Iran is diverse. We've mixed, like you said, we're a civilization. We're like Rome. We had a citizenship system almost. Like people from all over came and joined us and assimilated and became Muslim. So
yeah, learn Farsi. Farsi was the official language in much of the Islamic world.
Yeah, exactly. So
primary even to Arabic.
We weren't parochial. We weren't inward facing. We were outward facing. That's my problem also with the seculars is it's a very inward facing idea that Iran will just look inward and will disconnect itself from its neighbors and its heritage. Like there's no future for that civilization. Iran needs to be in conversation with its region, with its neighbors, with its history, with its tradition of being a multi-ethnic, religion and language based empire, not an ethnic based country, which is what they're going for. Like, oh, we're Persian or whatever. That's never been that way. You find people all over the Muslim world with Persian last names, and they will very proudly, I'm sure you've heard this, but they'll very proudly tell you, my ancestors were Persian who moved to Kashmir, who moved to Turkey, who moved to Iraq, who moved to, Uzbekistan.
Hyderabad.
Yeah, exactly. And they're very proud. And that was who we were. We moved, we mixed, we married, we spread our influence, our language. Now our vision is to be very inwardly facing and to abandon that heritage and just be like French people. And the saddest part I find, we're joining at the wrong moment. Like if you wanted to be secular and Western, the moment to do it would have been the 20s or the 30s when it was still upwardly adjacent. Like the secular Western world is on its way down. And right as it's like the school bus is veering off the side of the cliff, we're like, no, let us on before it crashes and goes off the cliff. Let us on too.
Yeah, we're in a world of increasing nationalism and even ethno-nationalism.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's a lack of confidence. Like if you're not grounded, if you become insecure and you start being more inward looking, more insular, more parochial. But if you are confident, you have a strong heritage, you have a strong grounding and an identity, then you're more confident to be able to look outward and be willing to mix, being willing to like open your doors. And
absolutely,
it's a confidence issue, I think.
Agreed.
Okay, well, I also want to ask you, maybe just as a final thing before we get into the super chats, there are a lot of commenters who have questions for you. Are you okay with looking at those?
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
Okay, let's do that. And before like the last thing, just the debate that you had. Because you had a debate.
Mateen.
Yeah. That was a very fascinating debate. And,
Thank you.
The guy is really detestable, and you did a great job in that debate.
Thank you.
Was that your first debate?
It was. I'm not a debater. I'm very far from you. I cannot say debate is my forte. I love your debates. I can't say that I can debate like you. But it's just, I'm lucky that they're not formidable opponents, the secular monarchists, because their ideology is like it's not that well liked by anyone. Go tell a random Westerner, I want a regime change to back a Western-backed dictator monarch. People would say, what? You want that? I mean, with you go up against the world order, secular liberalism, Christianity. That's a formidable opponent. That's like a fight that you start there on the up foot. You're on the back foot, like pushing. I'm already on the up foot. Like it's easy to say you're cringe. Everyone thinks they're cringe. So I'm no debater. I can give that title to you.
Yeah, appreciate that. But it was a good performance, and you really brought out a lot of the contradictions in their position. And if it's still online, right? It's still on.
It is online. Yeah, if you just look up Shahzad debate, it should. I've never done another one, so it should just come up.
Yeah, I encourage people to look at that. But you kind of really exposed the kind of backstabbing mentality.
Yeah.
Because he was arguing that we want like America and Israel to just destroy Iran.
Yeah.
Essentially,
he said he would take up arms and go fight in a war against Iran for America.
Yeah,
just think about that. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a great performance. And were you planning to do any other debates in the future?
If someone invites me, I would do it. I'm not really like a big confrontational person, but if someone really feels strongly about debating an opinion I have, sure, I would do it. I'm not against it.
The Sufi Rumi expert is going to come in, own you. Rumi expert destroys, like those YouTube titles. Destroys, owns the monarchist. Yeah.
It's a very beautiful dance which lubricates social settings and avoids the weirdness that you find with very direct Westerners, where Westerners will say, no, I don't want that. Or, no, I don't want to see you anymore. I'm busy today. Or please leave now. Like it allows you to communicate those just direct things in a very subtle and unpressuristic and like a very polite way. Like you would never tell someone, no, I don't want to come to your house. You'd say like, well, maybe I'll come. Maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe you should come. And then like, it's just this beautiful dance. And it's so, like you said, it's a gem of our culture, really. So something to be proud of that we maintained.
It's always funny with Westerners, though. Like growing up, like where I didn't understand that. Well, they don't have Tarof, so they come. Like a friend comes to your house, and then he immediately says, "So what's for dinner?" And he like goes to your kitchen, like opens the fridge. Oh, got anything to eat? Like, dude, like wait till I offer you. Or then you go to someone's house. You go to a Westerner's house, and like they might have like some fruit on the table or something, or some drink.
They'll never have you eat.
They'll never offer, and you're never gonna reach out and take it. You're never gonna go reach out and like, I'll just help myself. So it's
it's very awkward. Or they don't give drinks. Like when you go to a Persian person's house, they'll offer you a glass of Persian tea. when you go to a Western person's house, they'll just give you like a water bottle or a Coke can. And you're just like, okay, I don't really want Coke right now, but fine. Oh, man.
Yeah. So yeah, Taaruf is, and there's so many like subtleties and nuances with it that it takes like, it doesn't take long to learn, but it takes a lifetime to master.
Very true. This is very good way to put it, actually. Great.
So here's another question for you. Casey says, Charlesade, I saw a clip of you saying that the golden age of Islam is Eurocentric. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I have a video explaining it, but I'll just give this short spiel about it. Basically, Muslims love this idea that, oh, we had a golden age because it's very Western approved to talk about a golden age and we had a golden age. The problem is two things. One is that, well, three things. One is spiritual, that the golden age was the age of the prophethood and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. That was the actual golden age, when there was revelation, when there was prophetic guidance, when there were the best of generations. That for us theologically is the golden age. And then the second thing is that the idea that there was a golden age has implicitly within it that everything before and after has been terrible. That Islam was only good when we were scientifically advancing, which is good, but that not when the Sahaba were there, or not when the Futuhat were there. I think the golden age is when we conquered Persia and Rome. We conquered the two world empires with a ragtag team of soldiers who had nothing. Right? That was our golden age, maybe to me as well. And then the other issue is that it has implicitly in it this idea that Islam is doomed to fail. So if you actually read about what people said about the golden age, Muslims just love the idea, oh, golden age, golden age. They said, and I quote it in the video, Muslims are just doomed to decline. That Muslim civilization, once it peaks, has no regenerative energy. This was the people who cooked up this theory. We don't have time to get into it. Said this, that the idea was that Christianity has peaks and troughs, but Islam just has one golden age. So when Muslims say golden age, they don't know all that. But it's important, and Daniel, you've done work on this stuff, of actually deconstructing the way we think about Islam. And even if we mean it in a positive way, even if we don't know the negative things behind it, it's really important for us to understand the negative, the actual bad part of the mindset. Like, for example, Daniel, you've done a lot of work on this, work on the age of the marriage of Aisha radiallahu anha. It's good if as Muslims we have an internal debate about this. Everything in the seerah is important, but it's not good if we only care just to cope and to apologize about Islam. Similarly, it's good if we look back at the 1200s and say, wow, look how technologically advanced we were. We led the day then. But it's bad if we think, oh, Islam is only good when we're advanced technologically. And oh, the golden age was not actually the age of the Sahaba. It was in like Baghdad in 1150. So that's the short version of the answer.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a very good answer.
Thank you.
Here is a Saint Jihadist. Let's see. It's about Wahhabis. You talk about Wahhabis being bad, but Shia do justify Iran's actions on what they did to Sunnis and protesters. IRGC are killing innocents, and Islamophobes are using that to fund their hatred on Islam. Do you agree what the Iranian regime are doing to the protesters? So I guess you can answer.
Yeah, I think it's maybe for you, but I'll say thanks for the big super chat. Whoa, Andre. Anyway, so basically, look, we can criticize everyone. We don't have to have this side or that side. I'll criticize this side, that side, and my own side. Shias have a lot of beliefs that if you look into, maybe you wouldn't love. And Sufis, we have our goofies. We have our goofy Sufis. And Salafis have people who are very respectful and they love hadith and sunnah and they'll give you your rights as a Muslim. And we have Salafis who will attack you and lie about you and takfir everyone and their aunt as well. So every group has good and bad. Every government does good and bad. So Iran's actions, no, I don't think that every action Iran does is justified. And I don't think that an innocent person getting killed is ever defensible or good. So if Iran does it, it's bad. If Saudi does it, it's bad. If Egypt, Jordan, whoever does it, I'll say innocent people shouldn't ever be in any crossfire. So it's very easy for us. That's the beauty of being a Muslim. When you have truth and justice as your measuring stick, as your Furqan, and the Quran and Sunnah, then you don't have to like play sides and apologize for bad actions, even if they're coming from your side. Like me, I'm a Sufi, but I don't have to look at some goofball, wearing like a red or a purple hat, screaming and going and chimping out and say, oh, because he's a Sufi, I'll defend him. No, you don't understand. But I could say, yeah, he's weird. I don't do that. I don't approve of that. And I love Persian culture. But yeah, if Persian culture has haram stuff in it, yeah, I don't like that either. It's the beauty of being Muslim.
Yeah, I mean, it requires a level of IQ to be able to make these distinctions. Unfortunately, some people don't have that. But I mean, I would say, like, for the Iranian government, I agree with you. Like, there's plenty of things to criticize about them. But as far as them like resisting this regime change effort that's being funded by the West, I stand with Iran. I'm not going to stand for the this Western-backed Mossad operation. So, but yeah, if any innocent people are getting harmed in the crossfire, then obviously I don't agree with that. I don't support that. But let's like be real about what's happening. Okay, let's see. Last word says, reason why Muslims keep culture and Islam separate is because we don't want those quote unquote cultural Muslims, say what will happen if you say it's also culture. We don't want those cultural Muslims. What does that
I don't know. I want all Muslims. If they're just cultural, then we'll make them religious too. We'll show them the beauty of having a spiritual life. I don't like this viewpoint. I mean, yeah, I get it. The people who come and say like, I'm only culturally Muslim, but they don't do anything. Yeah, that's maybe not great, but that's a window. It's better for them to say I'm just a cultural Muslim than to say I'm an ex-Muslim, like so many of our Persian compatriots. So let's just get them in any way we can get them. If they're a cultural Muslim, great. They're still Muslim. We'll say, well, brother, spiritual life is important. It's not just culture. It's not just kebabs and tarof. It's also being in touch with your creator. Why are you here? So no, we need a window to catch them too.
Yeah, a lot of like, I think a cultural Muslim that has a sense of being Muslim and with the ummah, with the jama'ah, you know, they care about other Muslims. I think that's a good thing. Like, and we hope that they will become more religious, but the fact that they're going to be supporting, as opposed to a traitor, as opposed to someone who is going to like throw us under the bus or sell the ummah to our enemies, I think being cultural in that sense is much better. Preferable. Here's a theory that's being proposed by Netra. Theory: Trump isn't seeking chaotic regime change, but a deal, but it would require SL to step aside and Iran giving up a nuke program. In return, the regime gets to live on. Do you guys buy this?
Seems plausible. Trump strikes me as a deal maker. He tore up the original nuclear deal so that he could create a new one, right? That was his initial idea. So I think it's possible that he just wants to make a lot, like a deal basically with them. And he doesn't want a regime change war.
But do you think this would even happen? Like, would the supreme leader, Khamenei, actually step aside?
Would the supreme leader step aside? No, it's not possible. That part of it, no. I don't know the exact details.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, Trump might be seeking a deal. People are saying that Trump is also personally has a vendetta against Khamenei because he's the only world leader who has not agreed to meet with him. So
yeah, he won't, unfortunately.
So like North Korea, Kim Jong-un will meet with Trump. Xi Jinping will meet with Trump, but Khamenei will not agree to meet with Trump, and he takes this as a personal slight.
Yeah, it's a personal slight.
That's plausible. I think that Trump would actually try to like focus extra effort to take him out just for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally possible. I mean, I've kind of stopped speculating, unfortunately, because it's just so unpredictable. And I feel confident in just my statement I made about speculating that protests will not take the regime down as it is. But in terms of what Trump will do, I mean, he's so unpredictable. It's like part of his brand. I hesitate to speculate anything because who knows? Maybe tomorrow we'll wake up and we've seen that he struck Iran. That is just like a whole, elaborate game to throw Iran off its foot, that he said he'll strike and then he didn't. So they'll be like, okay, thank God he didn't. And all of a sudden he does. So who can actually tell you what's happening with certainty?
Yeah. Scary 3 more years of Trump.
Yeah. God help us.
This Saint Jihadist once again says, people think I'm a Wahhabi, but is it wrong to condemn it? If you support people who killed your own, then I should support white nationalists since they speak for Aussies like me who are barely surviving, living in my parents' home, wanting to move out. What do you make of this?
Get it.
Yeah.
People think I'm a Wahhabi, but is it wrong to condemn it? I don't understand.
What?
Just to say you're not a Wahhabi? If you support people who killed your own, then we don't support people who kill their own. White nationalists, since they speak, I don't understand what it's fully saying. Maybe they can, in the chats, clarify it. I don't
know what that means. But thank you for your big super chat.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. This is Segjagsvar. Thank you for your super chat. May Allah protect the Islamic Republic of Iran.
He's from Sweden.
He's from Sweden.
Swedish name, yeah.
Here's another one. Observer says, do Sunnis living in Iran have the same view of not wanting regime change because it benefits Israel? What do you think of?
Yeah, I talk to
Modadia
Iranian
Hamid?
Sunnis all the time in Iran. I've lived even with an Iranian Sunni before. I don't know. It's hard to say. They're mixed, just like all the groups in Iran. You have Sunnis who are very in mainstream society. The Achomis or Laristanis, they're very present in Dubai actually, and just the Gulf generally. But they're very kind of Persian. They speak Persian. They're very Persian assimilated. They're like the most Persian seeming Sunnis, aside from the actually ethnic Persian Sunnis as well. So maybe those ones, or maybe their views are more similar to mainstream Iranian society. But the Kurds, the Baloch, the Turkmen, the Arabs, they have considerations that are ethnic as well as geopolitical as well as religious. So if you ask a Baloch person, does he prefer Iran that's more religious than one that's more secular? Probably more religious. I mean, they're like Deobandi Hanafis. I can't imagine he wants secularism, but they also are upset with the economic situation. They're the ones hardest hit. It's the poorest region. So it's very complicated. It's hard to just say one thing. But you also do have Sunnis who, believe it or not, are very much in step with the government because they have this broader vision of having an Islamic society that transcends even whether it's 12 or not. Iran's not majority Sunni anyway, so it's always going to be 12er. The question is for them, do you want a religious 12er or a secular 12er? And many of them, they want a religious one, but I can't speak for them. But you'll find a diversity of views, and it's a big country.
Well, there's a perception amongst, or this is a claim that's often made by sectarians, is that, well, Sunnis are repressed in Iran, and basically if you're a Sunni in Iran, they're going to throw you in a camp, basically. Like, this is the kind of image that they want to project to rile up Sunnis against the Islamic Republic. How would you characterize the treatment of Sunnis in Iran?
No, that's definitely, the people exaggerate. I mean, look, ultimately, there's a few things at play. There are too many of them for the state's treatment to be below like a certain threshold. There's just like over 10 million at least, if not more. That's like the most conservative estimate, right? You have out of Iran's like 14 ethnicities, 4 or 5 of them are Sunni. And then you have ethnicities where they're mixed. So you'll find all kinds of people. Like Iran has millions of Turks. Some of them are Sunnis. And even in the northwest of the country, you'll find Sunni Turks. And Kurds, a lot of them are Sunni. Arabs, half of them are Sunni. Baloch, they're almost all Sunni, among other groups, right? And they're dispersed geographically and culturally. Some are urban, some are rural, some are nomadic. So there's no like one Sunni. Even in Khorasan, you have fully Persian Khorasani Sunnis that are very similar. I've been there to right across the border in Afghanistan. They're Hanafi, Deobandi type, Sunni Muslims there, and they speak Persian. So how the government treats them, I mean, there's ultimately
যাই হোক, আজকের মতন স্ট্রিম এখানেই শেষ করি। ইরানের এই যুদ্ধ অনেক লম্বা সময় যাবে এবং সকল অ্যানালিস্টরা এখন একমত যে এই যুদ্ধ, কালকে ডোনাল্ড ট্রাম্পও যখন অ্যানাউন্সমেন্ট করছে তখন বলছে আসলে এই যুদ্ধ লম্বা যাইতে পারে, কারণ তুমি যদি তোমার ট্রুপস গ্রাউন্ডে না পাঠাও তাহলে আসলে কীভাবে তুমি রেজিম চেঞ্জ করবা, মানে এটা ইম্পসিবল না, মানে ওই টাস্কটা। এবং মানুষ ট্রাই করার মতন হইতে আসছে বলে মনে হয় না, এবং যদি কেউ ট্রাইও করে ওটা খুবই ব্রুটাল, এবং মানুষের ওভারঅল মাইন্ডসেট কিন্তু এখন ইরানি সরকারের পক্ষে আছে। সো সময় সাপেক্ষ বলার জিনিস যে আসলে কি হয় না হয়। সো আবারও কোনো কিছু বলার হইলে আমি